Welcome back. It's Beyond the Box Score. I'm Dan Schneider. That's Jacob Gibbs, and we are joined by one of our favorite reoccurring guests, the guest that I don't know if you knew this, Rich, but the guest that I most get asked to be back on the show from my friends. They're always texting me, when is Rich Hribrar going to be back on the show? I want him dropping that knowledge. And we are two of the same because before the show, Rich mentioned that he is always perusing, checking, and reading the comments in the chat and at times arguing with the chat, which is something that I love to do, a favorite pastime of mine. So without further ado, it's Rich Hribrar. What's going on, Rich?
Hey, what's going on, guys? I was on a few weeks ago and we were talking quarterbacks, and Jacob was on his excursion, so he wasn't here. So it's great to have Jacob on the show and all of us to kind of get together and do a secondary show together.
Yeah, man, I'm psyched to be here with Rich. We did this. We did last year. We did like a tier ranking of the coaches together. It was like 2 hours or something. It was really, really fun. And I remember after the show, I was like, that could have been like freaking 10 hours. Like we could have had Reeves on for like 5 different shows easily. So I'm excited for today. I didn't prepare nearly as many notes today to just kind of leave it open-ended for Dan and Reeves to really get in and talk ball and me to just kind of listen, have some fun here.
Yeah. Well, let's do that. That's what we're doing today. We're talking play callers. And why is it important? Well, last year, if you nailed down the two best play callers, new ones at least, Liam Cohen in Jacksonville, Ben Johnson in Chicago, you probably won a lot of your league because you probably got DeAndre Swift at no cost and Colston Loveland for the fantasy playoffs and Trevor Lawrence, who literally was the league-winning quarterback. So who are going to be those guys this year and who are going to be the duds? Because there were duds last year as well. Few that we thought might be a little bit better than they were here on Beyond the Box Score, which we'll get to as well. But I do want to start with the coaches that we really feel like we just don't know that much about. And that's something that Rich Hribrar, Lord Reeves, can help us the most with. And I'll start with the one that I'm probably most in the dark on here, Rich. It's Brad Idzik in Carolina. Not entirely sure what to expect there.
Yeah, and it's very tough, right? I mean, Dave Canales was calling plays, and the thing that makes it the hardest is, anytime that we talk about these play callers, especially guys that are going to end up having a small sample, is you always want to look at like the personnel they had, right? Like did they elevate this personnel, or were they restricted by this personnel? And I think that's what we're going to run into this first year, and it's what we've run into with Dave Canales, taking the job in Carolina, is just, Bryce Young in this very fulcrum point of his career right now, picking up the 5th-year option. Like, what do we have with Bryce Young? I mean, this is a team that's run a very ultra-conservative game plan since Dave Canales took over as head coach. I mean, they're throwing the ball well below expectation. They're trying to, insulate Bryce Young. A lot of short passes, not a lot downfield. They're outside the boundaries for this offense. And what do we get, with Idzik coming in? And it's a big question mark, I think, when you look at the Carolina Panthers as it relates to fantasy football, because, outside of Tetterell and McMillan, everyone here is very affordable and you can get in at a pretty buyer's price. Obviously, a little bit of an ambiguous backfield with Chuba Hubbard and Jonathan Brooks, not really knowing what we are going to get out of Jonathan Brooks following, the 2 ACLs. He had a small sample size in college. Chuba Hubbard played with a calf injury last year. The offensive line was pretty nicked up, like in 2 of the last 3 years too as well. Jalen Coker gets the contract extension, came on strong that last final quarter of the season, and the playoff game you had Chris Brazzell. So there's a lot of just moving parts here. It's a very affordable offense, but I think it all starts with, I don't believe we're going to really get a clear answer, because I just don't know if the quarterback is good enough to provide clarity here.
It's a concern I've had for a while as well. Jacob and I go back and forth on it, specifically with Tet. It's like, is the quarterback good enough to fuel where Tet is being projected to be? Because Tet talent it's there. I believe in it. It's just, are they consistent enough? I felt like they tapped into a little bit in that playoff game. I don't know if you felt that way too, Rich, watching, or you, Jacob. Like there was a little bit more meat on the bone in the passing game. I just don't know how consistent it will be. I also worry, like last year, for example, without Idzik, they found something, especially in the second half of the season, in the run game specifically with their run scheme. If that changes at all and they kind of lose that aspect of their offense, I think it could really hurt the efficiency of the passing game as well. So that's Brad Idzik. Not someone we're really excited about. We can end it like that.
I mean, these are the people we do not know anything about. That's how we're starting it out. So I don't have anything on them. It's Brad Idzik taking over for Carolina. It's Davis Webb taking over for Denver with Sean Payton. That will be really interesting. The notes I have on Denver is they have used a lot more play action and motion lately. That's something that we're going to focus on a lot today. Is I actually made a spreadsheet that has like rankings over the past few years for each of these play callers, play designers, in terms of motion at the snap, which I think is really important. play action rate, on dropbacks, under center dropback rate, like that. A lot of these kind of cheat codes we've been focused on, and which teams have been doing that. Denver, I do think it's interesting that they've changed. Late into Sean Payton's career, he's shown a little bit of potential flexibility here, adaptability, and now we've got a new play caller taking over there. But yeah, a lot of these ones, I just wanted to start off and see if Reeves had anything, because it's like I don't know anything about Sean Mannion in Philadelphia. Like I know where he comes from a little bit, but we've gotten some really young guys coming in here to fill prominent roles. So if he's picked up on anything, I'm interested in that. But I mostly just wanted to acknowledge first before we do dig into the guys that we know something about.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I thought that was interesting with Davis Webb, just, you're trying to read some of the tea leaves of the commentary these guys have dropped, right? David Blau. And David Blau's been a little more vocal about he's been a little more transparent of what he's aiming to do than some of the other guys that you just brought up, like Sean Mannion. We're still kind of flying a little bit blind. And then we'll probably separate the Eagles in a second, because like there's a lot to unpack with the Eagles because the way their quarterback plays. But with the Davis Webb situation should probably be a little more seamless than the others, right? Obviously being under Sean Payton and, still having a Sean Payton influence. He said he wants to play with more tempo, which obviously we love. The interesting thing that I found about him, though, digging under the hood, is that he talked about moving Bo Nix around more. And going under the hood here, Bo Nix was already last in the NFL in dropback rate in the pocket last year.
Right.
And when he stayed in the pocket and played on time, he was actually pretty solid to good. And I say, that because his rating was 14th. He was 8th in completion rate, a lot of shorter passes because he was 20th in yards per pass attempt because of a lot of those short passes. But outside the pocket, Bo Nix has the Caleb Williams genes where you will get those splash plays and those exciting plays, but the consistency outside the pocket was a big red flag. Outside of the pocket, and mind you, this guy had the most dropbacks outside the pocket in the NFL last year, 28th in quarterback rating, 28th in completion rate, 28th in yards per pass attempt. His interception rate also tripled outside the pocket from when he stayed in the pocket. So I would love to see him more just staying in the pocket than not, but maybe the ankle is something that keeps him in the pocket more, and the addition of Jalen Waddle just being able to play on time. But other than that, I think this is still going to largely look, I think, similar to what we saw with Sean Payton and what they were doing last year, but just probably like Jacob said, maybe a little more motion play action than the early Payton stuff had with Drew Brees. And then more tempo, just more play volume. So this is also a team that has really great personnel top down too. They're pretty deep everywhere.
Yeah, they're pretty underrated offense when you think about it, with the addition of Waddle and just with where that offensive line is at. I also as we look at it, I guess it's partially based on the injury, but I've kind of been skeptical of how low Bo Nix has been ranked this entire offseason at quarterback.
We talked about it.
We talked about it on our show. And it feels like there's not that much value. There's not too many glaring values. He may be one of them. So I am interested to see what Webb does. He does have that background as well, working with Brian Dable and Calf. So I wonder if there's going to be some more intermediate vertical concepts baked in for Bo Nix in this offense from the pocket, like you said. That could
and
be
getting Waddle.
With Waddle, right? You kind of have to. Why else do you have him, just to throw those quick screens that he was throwing all last season?
He's not going to be Troy Franklin, right?
That's what I mean. He has to be throwing around the line of scrimmage every play to Waddle. So it's an interesting offense.
On the Bo Nix thing, so here I've got on YouTube, just so people can see this 2026 fantasy football rankings, top 36 quarterbacks with Rich Hribrar was Dan and Rich, and then just a week later, me and Ryan looked at which data has been predictive of future scoring at quarterback. We've been rolling out the series at every position. And we also honed in on Nix as being one of the most underrated quarterbacks this year. Ryan Heath had Bo Nix ahead of Jackson Dart in his rankings this year, which I think is definitely a hot take. Most people are pretty high on Dart and pretty low on Nix. So definitely a good call out here. I think this offense could put some points on the board.
All right. Let's move on to another play caller here. Let's talk a little bit about, do you have anything on Brian Fleury in Seattle? This one's probably, to me, one of the ones I'm most intrigued by, Rich, just because we're going from Kubiak, an offense that a coordinator, a play caller that we know maximize the offense. We're going to a new coordinator, and there was so much about that offense last year that I think boosted the value of fantasy players, specifically Jackson Smith and Jigba, when I went back and watched what Kubiak did with him. Do you have any concern that he could take a step back? What are your thoughts on Brian Fleury coming in?
Yeah, I mean, Seattle in general, they were just such, a hyper-efficient offense last year that there would probably be natural regression we were going to bake in to begin with. And now have a harder schedule. You have a first-time play caller. Obviously, stems from a lot of play callers that we love, right? Like we've loved this coaching tree. It's something we talked about a couple years ago when we first started coming on this show, and we were like, "Hey, man, like, what if we just built the whole team out of like Shanahan tree guys?" Right now, now the league is done. Like pretty much the league has made us do that because what are we up to? Like 18 of these guys or something? Like have all come from this coaching tree. So, but it's really we're flying dark. It's just a step of faith based on where he comes from. I mean, this is a guy that does a very little history in terms of even offensive involvement. Right? He was with Darnold in 2023. He was the tight end coach that year for the 49ers when Darnold was there. So they do have some familiarity. But we have no idea like what he's going to do conceptually. We assume it's going to be a lot of adjacency to what Kubiak was doing, since Kubiak runs a lot of what the Kyle Shanahan version of the McVay tree does. But this is a team I think that is a little bit kind of intriguing top down, especially when you start at the top, because JSN, I've comped him a few times, like this year's Saquon, right? Like he just had such a season that it's just so unreplicable, like what he did last year.
I agree.
It doesn't mean he's going to be bad or like fall apart. It's just like he could have like 1,200 yards and be a disappointing fantasy pick, right? Like that's kind of how like Saquon was last year. And we have Shaheed not onboarding in season, like he's with the organization. He got a big contract extension. We have some movement in the run game, and like I talked about the schedule a lot too. The Seahawks only faced 4 teams all year, including New England in the Super Bowl, that were in the top half of the league, in pass defense per attempt by like a compilation metric that I use. And it's like, dude, like they're going to face way better teams here. It was just Houston, Carolina, Minnesota, and the Patriots, all they faced, right?
Wow.
And so like there's a lot of moving parts here for Seattle. I think they have some concern. I think, Mike McDonald's obviously going to have the defense still flying around and doing his thing. But offensively, you have to have some kind of pause here. The good news is no one's like really expensive outside of that JSN pick. Everyone's affordable.
Yeah.
Hey, shout out to us though. I'm gonna show you like where we missed on some of the tier rankings that we made last year and everything. But I did listen back to that episode a little bit, and we did hit on JSN as being somebody who's like, this is potentially a huge change for him in terms of the route designs, condensed formations, more under center stuff, all this Klint Kubiak stuff. The way that Klint Kubiak used Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed and stuff like that, I think this could really benefit JSN. So just wanted to get that in real quick.
Yeah, they finally let him be a real receiver, and look at what happened. He was amazing. Before we take a break, and after we take a break, we're going to talk about 2 of the new play callers for new teams that we're most excited about. I do want to get a little bit. I know we don't know a lot about David Blau, Rich, but I just want to get
He's telling us a lot, though. We've got some quotes.
Yeah, he's given us some stuff, probably more than the rest of these guys. But I want to get your thoughts before we go to break, just real briefly on like what you saw from year 2 of the Cliff offense with Jaden. Because I think when I watched them, and I didn't watch too much, I probably watched 1 or 2 games of their tape, I felt like Jaden just wasn't seeing the field as well. And maybe that was teams adjusting to what Cliff was doing in the passing game. But it just looked like a totally different quarterback. The concerns I had for him coming out of LSU were I thought there were a lot of times at LSU he would break contain from the pocket and put his head down. He wouldn't keep his eyes up. And then that all went away in year 1, and then it resurfaced in year 2. Do you have any concern just about moving to a different offense, or like what Jaden will be in year 3?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just to start at the top, though, I mean, it's like Cliff Kingsbury in general, like this has been kind of the story with him, is just he doesn't adapt. There's no adaptation. I mean, he doesn't move personnel around. I mean, and last year it's easy to say like, all right, well, they had just so many injuries, catastrophic injuries across like at every position, last year, that it was hard for him to kind of calibrate. But that's what we look for in these coaches, right? Like, can you adjust? And he's just a guy at each stop he's always been good to start. And then as teams start to figure him out, he's not able to counterpunch. And I think that there was a lot of that last year. I mean, you saw even with Terry McLaurin, when I was going under the hood with Terry McLaurin, how he could be utilized in this offense, because I'm probably more bullish at cost on Terry McLaurin than any other player in this offense. You do a lot of last year. It's just like a lot of hitches. Hey, Terry, go line up at left wide receiver on line of scrimmage. You're either running one of 3 routes. You're running either a hitch, a screen, or a vertical route, like a 9 route. And that's like all we're doing with you.
So true.
Whereas, Blau's come in and like he's talked about initially, like, I'm going to create explosives with Terry McLaurin. And if he takes anything from playing under Ben Johnson and Dan Campbell, like what has like Ben Johnson done at each stop? It's the horizontal stuff, right? Like using horizontal leverage and getting these guys across the field and creating explosives. And we haven't really seen that from Terry McLaurin over the course of his career. So it's kind of exciting to see him, kind of maybe have access to like a section of the route tree that he hasn't had. Jaden Daniels in general is interesting because like he just hasn't, going back to college, like he's never played under center.
Right.
And that's going to be, David Ball's already told us, like, this is going to be a big shift. He's taken 33 snaps in the NFL under center. That's it. And, we did this with Caleb, though, too, right? Like, Caleb was like the same way through college and 1 year in the NFL. And Ben Johnson said, hey, this is what we're doing. But it's been real restrictive on Jaden Daniels through 2 years. And remind you, this isn't the Cliff Kingsbury scheme, like a scheme that's not counting punch, or anything creative, but it's really dinged him from having a low rate of pre-snap motion the past 2 years, 24th the last 2 years, and then he's like in the middle league, 18th in play action rate. Those things are going to go way up for him. It just depends on, like how much faith can you take into him, like, early adaptation, right? Like, is there gonna be a learning curve with this, with him? He's never turned his back to the defense, right? Like, so like all these things, we talked about like Aaron Rodgers for years was like, hey, he would get coaches that want to do this. And he's like, I'm not doing that because I don't want to take my eyes off the defense. I want to see it moving, right? Especially in this era of the NFL where now we're starting to see a shift, right? Like we're starting to see the adaptation of the Fangio defense, like the quarters, the shell coverage, and now we're doing pre-snap, post-snap stuff with like, Brian Flores and now Mike McDonald, who I think is like, taking this to another level, and Aviro, the Panthers head coach. It's funny because you don't think of the Panthers having like an awesome defense, but they were like really great against all these meta offenses. And why? Because they were one of the highest rate of teams that shifted coverage pre and post snap. When you turn your back to the defense, it's a different look. They changed the look more than any other team. So all those things are adaptations that Jaden Daniels is going to have to make. And will there be a learning curve? There's not a lot of talent, like individual talent you love. Maybe they end up with Brandon Ayuk. But I'm still a little more bullish on just like the concept. For conceptually, I'm into this being a plus for the Commanders.
It was a great breakdown. I really found a lot of that incredibly interesting, especially with the idea of like when you turn your back to the defense, if you're running like the pattern match defense and everything that Fangio is about, you're changing the look, you're disguising the safety rotation, and it just gives it's like it relies on the quarterback in my mind to understand more pre-snap, I would say, because you have to kind of predict where rotation is going to happen if you're turning your back. And you see like Brady later in his career, I just thought it was interesting you mentioned that, like so much less play action under center later in his career, right? He was just in the gun, kind of reading that defense out. So we'll see how that goes. It's like for him, it's for Lamar too. Like Lamar's going to have a big change here with Doyle, which we'll get to in a moment. But actually, one more thing before we get to break. We saw a good question in the chat we're going to hit. It's from Derek Graham. 9276. Being an Eagles fan, any insight you guys can provide on Sean Mannion would be awesome. I'm anxious on his plans for Saquon, especially after Jeff Stoutland, their ex-run coordinator, has left the team.
Two legendary run coordinators leaving in Philadelphia and Atlanta. It's going to be really interesting to see how that shakes out. We've got the evil genius here, Sean Mannion. I've loved this. Ryan Heath has been tracking this. I'm sure you've seen the quotes from Jordan Mailata. Says, like with Kellen Moore, he said he'll make a great head coach one day, likened his teaching ability to Jeff Stoutland's. And then with Kevin Patullo last year, he goes, there's carryover, but it's no surprise to us in the O-line room because of the way Stoutland coaches. So he says basically nothing, And then on Sean Mannion, he's like, the guy knows ball. If I were to lock the three smartest people in the facility in one room, Sean would be there. And I think Sean would be just by himself. It would just be Sean. He's a wizard. And man, I'm super excited. As the year goes on, we got to display what is in that beautiful mind of his. Called him an evil genius. Pretty excited for the potential here. Like Washington, they're talking about using a lot more play action under center type stuff, which has not been something that Philly has used much. I'm not sure. Do you have any thoughts on Saquon specifically? That's who our question was about.
Me or Dan?
You can hit it, Rich.
Well, I mean, just the Eagles in general, from a schedule stance, like it just looks so promising, at least the opening 3 quarters of the year. The bummer is when you get to the fantasy playoffs and you see Seattle and Houston Texans and you're like, damn it. But it's great. Like it's as good as an open. If they're going to have like an acclimation period, like they have the layout to kind of find their way through it based on opponents. And like you said, Jalen Hurts, he's been under center 14% of his career snaps. There was a lot of talk about it last year. Remember, they used a little bit of it in the Minnesota game and had a lot of success on some play action stuff. Like A.J. Brown caught 2 long balls. Devontae Smith caught a long ball. But it was like a byproduct of their starting center was out, and I think it was Brett Toth struggled snapping, and that's why they went under center more in that game, and it just wasn't sticky. I'm very curious of the additions plus Mannion, because if he's his guy has a little bit of history under McVay too as well. It's the on time middle of the field stuff. And when you marry that with Jalen Hurts, who's been a guy that has been a more see the throw, make the throw quarterback, that's where I kind of like, how is this going to work out, right? You add Mekhi Lemon and Stowers, and we'll see how much they play early in the year. I would assume Stowers is probably more of a package player to open his career and more of a future investment, but he could have some input here if he gets on the field early. Mekhi Lemon is going to play, whether that's in 2 wide receiver sets or 3 wide receiver sets remains to be seen. But if Mekhi Lemon's on the field and if Dontavian Wicks is on the field and you don't have AJ Brown, this one of throwback X receivers, is this a style that Jalen Hurts is going to be comfortable in? And that's kind of where the marriage kind of comes up with me. This also too is an offensive line that got old in a hurry, right?
Yeah.
This happened to the Cleveland Browns, right? We thought the Cleveland Browns offensive line was just going to be locked in, and they got old in a hurry. And that's kind of what happened here. So a lot of moving parts, but I do think the Eagles are set up the best from a transition period, like based on the opening schedule, because the defense is so good still. Yep. And they, you add Reek Woolen to this too, like they're going to be able to kind of let this offense kind of figure some things out. And if they do hit the ground running, then you're going to have some real big, crooked fantasy lines for some of these guys early in the year.
Yeah, I would say my caution on that would be, I don't know if we'll ever get back to what we saw in 2024 from Saquon in the run game with the explosives because of what you mentioned, Rich, the depreciation of their offensive line, where it was the level it was playing at in 2024 versus the level it played last year, via a lot of injuries, obviously. And then what I expect of it this year, which is a year older from Lane Johnson. He might be close to retirement, and he's been getting hurt a lot lately. Mailata's still a great player. Dickerson, amazing when he's healthy, but he's also just battled so many injuries dating back to Alabama, going into the draft, and now as well. And then at guard and right guard and center, it's just not what it was like. They haven't developed the way that usually these players develop under Stoutland. And then Stoutland's gone now. Like, that's a big deal. That's the best offensive line coach in football gone from the team. So I'm skeptical on Barkley because his path to me is so narrow versus a lot of these backs we're drafting in that range. It says simply like he needs those explosive long run touchdowns again, like he got in 2024, because he's not getting a lot of short touchdowns, not getting a lot of receptions either. So it'll be interesting to see how that
develops. You can't
count
on the receptions even with AJ Brown gone to be there with the mobile quarterback. And you talk about like the 2 youngest guys, Juergens and Dickerson, the 2 guys here that are under 30. I mean, they both went overseas to get stem cell treatment this offseason.
That's never great. Yeah. I mean, it could be good. I don't know I don't know the ins and outs of that, but let's take our first break and we'll get back into it with some offensive play callers we're excited about.
When you need your sports news all the time,
we've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ hits every highlight from all the sports that matter to you.
JJ, we appreciate your time breaking it down.
A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
With the plays you missed.
What a finish at the final round of play.
And analysis to give you an edge.
All we need is 20 points.
I was shaking in my boots.
Texas, Ohio State, who wins this game?
We're bringing you that breaking news right here on HQ.
CBS Sports HQ, streaming free 24/7.
I love that. Like, I put together the show sheet and I put together, a quick list, 4 guys, 5 guys, where I was like, we don't know anything about them. I just want to quickly mention them, and it'll probably take 3 to 5 minutes. And we're 23 minutes into
they're the most intriguing to unpack.
For sure.
Yeah. You kind of got to run through like a range of outcomes, right? Like you want to talk about like where this could go wrong, where it could excel.
It's good stuff. And we don't have a hard out on time today, which is great. So we might talk to Rich for 2 hours. I just thought that was funny. I really want to talk about Declan Doyle. To me, he's kind of the next guy here where it's like we still don't really know much about him. The dude is freaking 29 years old when he got hired to be the offensive coordinator for the Baltimore Ravens. I mentioned that Denver is using more play action, using more motion. That kind of started with Declan Doyle when he got there with Sean Payton. And then he's immediately hired in 2025 to join Ben Johnson's staff. Johnson, obviously one of the sharpest guys in the NFL, super locked in, and this is who he chooses to come in and help him run the offense. And then Jesse Minter, 43 years old. We've got kind of the youth movement here in Baltimore, moving in a different direction with the franchise. And what does this mean for Baltimore? What could it mean? It's interesting to me. I've got this stat on the screen. Lamar Jackson is QB1 in passer rating from play action in both 24 and 25 has been more accurate when operating the play action game. So we might see more of that. We know the play action has been a boost for efficiency either way, and especially when you have freaking Derrick Henry to scare defenses, that could be really, really efficient. We've seen Zay Flowers has piled up crazy numbers out of play action. If you look at just play action splits and at the receiver position, like he's up there. It's like JSN and Flowers, and then everybody else is a distant third behind those two. And then we've seen his like yard per out run rates just keep climbing year after year. And I think a big part of that is because he benefits from the threat of Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. So I'm really curious about this Baltimore offense because it could be good, if we've got another evil genius here. And it also could be really concentrated, I think. And so I was curious, any thoughts that you have on Baltimore, Reeves?
Yeah, this is an exciting one because, Todd Monken kind of unlocked the ceiling for Lamar, especially from like a fantasy stance, because he was the first guy to kind of marry that elite, like the elite passing upside of Lamar. He was the best passing version of Lamar Jackson that we had. And then you still had, for fantasy football, the mobility stuff. And, we obviously had that the bottom fall out of that last year with just like the mounting injuries over the course of the season after he came back middle of the year. But Monken was the first guy to get Lamar an extension to the conversations we've had with all these guys, playing more under center. His under center rate has gone up each of the past 4 years. Last year got to like a third of his snaps, right under 33% of the snaps under center. And over the past 4 years under center, Lamar Jackson leads the NFL in completion rate. He's the QB5 in yards per pass attempts, and he's 11% touchdown rate under center. Like it's actually bonkers. It's like a bonkers like statistic. And you talk about like the concentration. We still have just kind of Zay Flowers is going to occupy probably this, lion's share of like, 26% plus target share or more. They won't throw him in the end zone still probably. But, then you've got Mark Andrews still kind of here, and the door's kind of open for Mark Andrews. It's like, is he kind of like a little bit of a sleeping giant at the position this year? Or is he just kind of washed? Do we not have any like yardage potential here? Can he create after the catch anymore? That remains to be seen. But he still is going to be a big red zone staple. For this offense. Even last year, he was third in the NFL amongst tight ends and end zone target share among tight ends. So he can still score a lot of touchdowns for us, especially since we're in the throes of best ball season. We got Bateman coming back. You add Jacoby Lane, you add Elijah Surratt. We'll see how those guys get involved. I'm really curious to see just like how much, like a guy like Matthew Hibner gets on the field in year one. He's pretty intriguing, I think, as well from like an athletic profile stance and what this team probably wants to do, because where Declan Doyle comes from, look at the guys he's been under. Like how could you not be kind of at least a little bit excited, right, to see what happens? Like under Sean Payton, last year was with Ben Johnson. So if he's pulling some stuff from what he's learned at these stops, which is you would hope all these coaches are doing, that's the reason they got the job, right, is that we are going to see some multiple tight end stuff again, still with the Ravens, who have always had it, but we don't have Ricard. Ricard's gone, so we're not going to have the fullback in the offense. So when they do go multiple tight ends, are we going to see like 12-13 versus having the fullback on the field like we used to always get with the Ravens when they would play bully ball? So this is one I'm definitely excited about because Lamar Jackson just possesses so much fantasy upside, and also another team that has like a really great schedule until like the end of the year.
I think with some of these, the way I look at it, it's like I am excited about what Doyle can do for this offense, but I don't necessarily believe, like, I want to pinpoint like the two last year, Jacksonville and Chicago, for example. Those two, it's two great offensive minds taking over for, let's be honest, just really, really bad, poor, at least from an NFL standpoint, offensive minds. Like what Chicago had before Ben Johnson and what Jacksonville had before Liam. I don't feel that way with Baltimore. That's the only problem I have here. Like, I think Todd Monken was one of the best in the NFL, and I think he was by far and away the best fit for Lamar Jackson and how to maximize him as a passer. So I do have some skepticism about their passing game because of that. I feel the opposite about their run game. I think like Declan Doyle for the run game is going to be awesome for Derrick Henry and for whoever actually ends up getting snaps back there. It'll be Henry mostly, I assume. So I'm like most excited about the run game, especially adding Ioane to the mix at right guard with the 14th overall pick. So that's where I'm focused on more with Doyle, what he's going to do for their run game. The play action passing game will be interesting. I'll have to see with Lamar, but I'm not entirely sure where I want to like bet on besides Mark Andrews, who I am in on, Rich. I'm back in on Mark Andrews. You mentioned it.
What could go wrong?
This happens to me every year.
Yeah.
I get in on these old tight ends, Kelsey, now Andrews. I just can't help myself. It's a touchdown game at the tight end position in the end, and this guy is most likely to score a lot of touchdowns at this position. So I'm in on Andrews.
You all ready to talk about our 2025 play caller ratings?
Oh boy,
Yeah, let's do it. Let's get
all right. Good and bad. There's some good.
The music, yeah. All right. So my first question is, and this is specifically for fantasy, is how we did this. And my first question is, we've got the S tier was Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay and Andy Reid. I was like, let's start there. Is there anybody that you want to add? And Kevin O'Connell got added to that. I am curious how you're feeling after we finally saw the floor kind of fall out for KOC. For a while, it looked like he was invincible and he could just make it work with any quarterback. That proved to not be the case. And then, things continue to be worse in Kansas City. So are you dropping those two out of the S tier? And if so, how far down would they go?
the cue the 9 meme. Well, me and Dan expressed a lot of, it's a no-brainer move for the Vikings to add Kyler Murray at the cost that they had and what was available. But also we expressed on that show, we don't have to get into the nitty-gritty of what we did, the amount of concerns we still have with the marriage of Kyler Murray in that system. Like even while it'd be intentional upgrade. So I still think KOC is fine, but I think we do have to move him down a little bit just because we found out that like he still can't completely make water into wine.
Yeah, that's fair. Like you can't. It's tough for me. No, I'm with you on that, Rich. Like it's tough for me to gauge where I want to move him because I just personally think McCarthy was so bad at playing the position last year. He could get good eventually. He's just nowhere close to how, especially in that scheme. Like it was so different than what he ran at Michigan, and he just gets plopped into this, and he wasn't good in it, and he was small, and he got hurt. Like watching him against the Giants in that cold weather game, he got banged up, beat up, and left the game. I was just like, this dude is going to be tough to make it in the NFL with that frame, which was a big concern of mine going into the NFL for him and Jaden. I'm like, guys don't usually make it sub 200 or about 200. Like it just doesn't work a lot at the quarterback position. It's like I think Nate Tice did a great article on this. Looking back through history, it's like Jeff Garcia did it for a couple seasons. There's like a couple other examples, and that's about it. Like you need a frame to play at the NFL level. Kyler doesn't have that frame either. So it's not like we're making a huge jump here. I kind of feel like they just signed him because he was $1.5 million against the cap and they didn't really have much cap space. Like as simple as that, like the Russell Wilson thing. But it's fair to drop KOC in the sense that he can't make, water out of or wine out of water. But like one guy we have up there, I feel like we have to drop as well is Andy Reid. Like where are we at with that? Like, I mean, what's going on there, Jacob? Do we drop Andy Reid? This run game's been terrible now for years, despite having pretty good talent on the offensive line. So I don't think he's doing anything imaginative in the run scheme, at least. Passing game wise, I don't know if it's there either. So where are we at with Reid? Does he have to drop?
I'm really hoping we see Andy Reid reinvent himself, which would obviously be a huge surprise for somebody that is at this point in his career. But the Kenneth Walker thing, I'm just like, I'm curious if they're actually going to go to more under center stuff this year, which could be really a boost for the offense because it's gotten really stale. Just having Bing Gretsch on last week, he just brought up the fact that like they've been asking Patrick Mahomes to throw into passing defenses so often, so much more than other teams, and that's something we're really focused on today. Is like which offenses are through personnel or whatever deception it might be, they're getting situations where they're at an advantage. They're able to catch the defense off guard and pass against more run defenses. The Chiefs have been the opposite of that for a long time now. And so what does Kenneth Walker mean? Like if he gets the space that Pacheco has had, it could be a lot of explosives for Walker and better success rates and stuff like that. Or if teams are more focused on stopping him, if the Chiefs are able to marry the run game with the pass game and get under center more and present something that looks scary to defenses with the Super Bowl MVP and everything, what could that mean for maybe the deep passing? Maybe it finally gets back on track. I have only a faint glimmer of hope. I don't have much to offer here in terms of optimism. I'm curious what you think, Reeves.
Yeah, I mean, for the run game, I'm interested just to see if teams continue to, play the Chiefs the same way they have. It's the Chiefs have operated. They built this roster with a little bit of hubris, and this happened with the Bills a little bit too with Josh Allen. It's hard when you have a player this good, right? Like when you had a player, but like Mahomes set the bar so high, but it was also, don't forget, like it was also an intersection with the apex of Tyreek Hill and the apex of Travis Kelce, 2 Hall of Fame talents. Tyreek probably won't make the Hall of Fame, but we know there's a section where he was by far like a premier player at his position and offered a unique skill set that was hard for defense. The defenses had to acknowledge. Now, since Kelce's picked up a little tread on the tire, they traded Tyreek Hill. They never were able to kind of, replace Tyreek Hill. We've seen defenses not respect what the Chiefs have put on the field in the passing game on top of the Chiefs just kind of running, this was what we do, right? And we've seen the man coverage rate for Patrick Mahomes go up. He's absolutely struggled in that capacity because these guys just don't get open. And we talked about like Tom Brady earlier on. Like Tom Brady had an intersection of his career too. Like there's a reason they had to go out and get Randy Moss, right? And then there was a point later in his career where he was tired of dragging, the ghosts of like Jabbar Gaffney and like Rashae Caldwell like to over the threshold. And they had to get him playmakers. When he left to go to Tampa Bay, that he was like, dude, I'm out of talent. I'm out of surrounding talent. You have to still give these guys talented playmakers. And I know like Rashee Rice has been good on the menu that he's been given, but it's been a necessity of the offense. And I would argue that it's hurt the Chiefs that they have to use Rashee Rice in the capacity that they do. So against man coverage, I mean, look at 26th in quarterback rating, Patrick Mahomes, 21st in completion rate, 28th in yards per pass attempt. And like, this is a guy you should be scared to play man coverage against, right? The past 3 years, Patrick Mahomes, 17th in completion rate, 23rd in yards per pass attempt, 20th in touchdown rate. He's been below Tua Tagovailoa in touchdown rate the past 3 years. 20th in interception rate. Like these are appalling metrics for a quarterback that we still believe from a talent perspective is arguably the best player at his position. So that when I see stuff like that, it falls on the personnel you put around him and coaching, right? Like,
can I
go for it?
No. Finish what you were going to say first.
No, I was just circling back to like, I think we have to dock Andy Reid a little bit here because the teams he hasn't counterpunched what teams are doing.
This is unfortunate for me to say. I've said it before. I won't spend too much time on it, Jacob and Rich. I'm not sure I believe Mahomes is still one of the most talented throwers in the NFL anymore. It hurts me to say because I was the biggest Mahomes fan in the world, like coming into the NFL. I don't know what's going on with him. I just don't feel like I'm watching the same thrower of the football anymore when I watch the Chiefs. So that's where I'm at with that. I think, yes, it's on, like you made a good point. It's a lot on Reed, but I think it's some on Mahomes too. Something's off with him. I don't know what it is. The timing doesn't look great. The arm talent doesn't look the same to me at all. From what, at least like you go back and watch Texas Tech Mahomes or 2017 Mahomes, I don't think you're watching the same arm to me when I watch those two players. And I don't know if it's like all the injuries piling up or whatever. It feels like I've never seen him have any like shoulder or arm injuries, but whatever it is, I'm not so sure he's the same quarterback that he was. That's just the way I see it though.
He's had a lot of lower body injuries.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to add on that. I do think that the Rashee Rice point is interesting.
Yeah, very interesting.
He's been like an extension of the run game and almost kind of a gimmicky thing that it feels like they've had to do. And I do wonder if the Kenneth Walker edition means something for him. Like we might not see as much of that this year.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see that as well. I think that those are the two most important points about the Chiefs moving forward. What are they going to do with Walker? And are we going to see a little bit of evolution and not just be like lean on Rashee Rice as your solver for every play? And just to mention one thing in the chat, these are not, I see people commenting on the rankings. These are not our rankings moving forward. This is how we ranked them this time last year. So if you're saying Kellen Moore is way too low, we get that. We're going to change that. We're going to make a lot of amendments to these rankings moving forward.
What's funny is we were high on Kellen Moore.
Yeah.
Like
I was not high enough.
I mean, I guess. I mean, like the Saints produced one good player last year for fantasy. Like I don't think people were really high on Kellen Moore at this point last year, and I think putting him in this tier was meaningful because it was above Klint Kubiak, who I was extremely excited about last year. It was his first time as a head coach. We didn't know how that would go. And the other thing with Kellen Moore is he had worked with really, really, really talented offenses before that. And like, yeah, Saquon scored a lot of points under him. Zeke scored a lot of points under him. Like they Keenan Allen, CeeDee Lamb stuff. Like, yeah. But we really hadn't seen what it might be like in a different situation. And so he was pretty speculative. But yeah, there's lots on Kellen Moore that's exciting. What I want to talk about before we hit our second break here is Liam Cohen and Ben Johnson. Mm-hmm. So we wanted to put them in S tier, But like Kellen Moore, it was their first time.
I said I was going to throw Dan under the bus. I think Dan wanted us not to.
Well,
no.
Like Kellen Moore, it was their first time as a head coach, and you just don't know.
I respect your comment. I might have been lower on Kubiak than you guys. I don't feel that way with Coleman and Ben Johnson.
You just don't know how that's going to go. So we left them in A tier with Mike McDaniel and Matt LaFleur and Sean Payton. And I think that they clearly passed the test in their first year. We'll spend a little bit of time with that when I dig into this Excel sheet that I made and show y'all that. So they're in S tier with Shanahan and McVay. Is there anybody else that's in that S tier for you guys?
Yes, for me. And I'm mad because I didn't fight hard enough for him last year. We moved him into a decent tier, but he deserves to be all the way in S for me. It's Josh McDaniels. I mean, if you look at the first read rate for Drake May, that's how I'm judging this, honestly. That's a lot of how I'm evaluating this. Was the quarterback throwing to his first read a lot? Yes. And if the answer is yes to that question, was that working a lot? And the answer is yes for Josh McDaniels and Drake May. I feel like McDaniels been underrated for a while in his career as a play caller. He did this in New England. Obviously, it didn't go great with the Raiders, but they had no talent. He's back with some talent and not really that much to work with if you look at it for how good that Patriots offense was. Yeah, I know the schedule was easy, but like they were not working with a lot on the offensive line in my mind. They were not working with a lot in the receiver room in my mind either. And that offense was super functional, super efficient, super explosive at times. So McDaniels would be one for me that I would move into that range. But maybe he's one tier below. Maybe A is fair. I don't know.
We put him in B tier, and that was all thanks to Reeves. So that I want to shout that out. That was big to get in on that.
Dan was in on that one too.
I feel like I was in on that one.
I just threw him under the bus. I had a problem back up. He was but no, I mean, we brought up McDaniels late in the show last year, and I thought like it's one of those things where you look at the schedule and it's like, well, also a good play caller should exploit the defense to that degree if they should. So like, to me, that's a feature, not a bug. The problem is that when they were put to the test, they underperformed. It's like they overperformed when we expected them to crush, and they kind of underperformed when we expected them to struggle. And that's tough, but I do love just look at what he got out of the players though. And I think that's a testament. It's not just Drake May. There was one player on their team that ran a pass route and over half the drop or over 2/3 of the dropbacks, right? Like it was just Diggs and he wasn't even a full-time player. Now you get AJ Brown, who's going to be on the field the full time. Romeo Doubs is going to be a full-time player too, as well. What he's able to get out of the backfield that had injuries and they were kind of finding out what kind of split they wanted the front half of the year. So I think and the offensive line, right? Like this is an offensive line that was kind of probably playing two guys out of position in their first year in the NFL, and still might be playing a guy out of position in the second year in the NFL. But one is moving back to his natural position this year, Jared Wilson. So I think when you combine just like all of those factors, he does get a little bit of a bump. If we keep him in A, I think it's fine, but he's definitely coming out of B.
I wouldn't put him in the S tier for the simple fact that, like you just mentioned, it's so spread out, and these are for fantasy football. And is it actually that useful? How many players can you actually use from the Patriots?
It's fair.
He kind of reminds me of Matt LaFleur a little bit in that way, where like he does boost the efficiency, but it's not been the distribution has been really watered down. I would actually push for Brian Schottenheimer ahead of him at this point. Dan and I did our coaching, our most valuable coach for fantasy last year. I think it was like week 14 or something like that. And Shoddy, and maybe it was a little bit early. It was Shoddy and Shane Steichen. It was before everything fell apart in Indianapolis. Those are the two who stood out to us as man, they've really upped their game this year. They hammered all the things that we like. Schottenheimer ends up producing the second most fantasy points for any team last year, behind only Sean McVay and the Rams.
Right.
So I think he belongs in that discussion. But to me, it's just these four. It's Shanahan, McVay, Ben Johnson, Liam Cohen, and the S tier.
That's fair.
All right, let's hit our second break, and we'll be right back. We've got a lot more to talk about.
You need a hug?
You need a fist?
Crutch, crutch, crutch.
Crutch, crutch.
Crutch, you need anything.
I do have one question.
We didn't mean right now.
I want to talk about Drew Petzing. He was in the D tier. Our D tier was really interesting to me. It was Drew Petzing, Klint Kubiak, and Zach Robinson. And two of those three got fired, basically. And the other one won the Super Bowl. And I remember looking at D tier and being like, this tier is really provocative. I don't know what to do with them,
Yeah.
but I'm really interested in all three of them for various reasons. And they're all on the move. So Robinson is going to Tampa Bay. I want to talk about him for sure. And then obviously Klint Kubiak, hopefully being able to revive the Raiders, and then Petzing going to Detroit. The Detroit thing is really interesting. Obviously, Trey McBride is the thing that we focus on with Petzing. But I want to show you just real quick before we dig all the way into this sheet that I made. Petzing, what really stood out to me about Petzing is he's deceptive. Like, he's doing a really good job of making it look like a run and then passing in those situations. And so I've got the under center dropback rates. I believe he's number 1. Yeah, number 1 in under center dropback rate last year, number 5 in under center dropback rate in 2024. And I think his run games have worked really well at times. Last year, it was a bit of a struggle with all of the injuries, but we've seen it be like a success rate machine at times in Arizona with not great offensive line play. And so I just think like he's somebody who gets a little maligned because of the Kyler Murray of it all. Last year we talked with Reeves, and he's like, it's hard to know what to make of Petzing or Murray, like what the problem is exactly here, because we've never really seen him not with Kyler. And then we did last year, and it was a ton of fantasy points. Obviously that was, kind of some maybe fluky stuff with some garbage time production and everything, but like still they were putting a lot of points on the board.
Well, before the garbage time stuff started, I mean, look at the 3 immediate games after Kyler's injury. And there was a seismic shift to how they approach things. Because with Kyler, it was all under center passing. In the first 3 games, we saw them immediately get Jacoby Brissett under center, and they started running a ton more play action. And then they almost beat the Colts, they almost beat the Packers, and they beat the Cowboys in Dallas. And then everything just completely like went off the rails. They were on like their 5th running back. They were missing two starting offensive linemen, sometimes 3 per week, and then the defense fell apart. Like they were missing guys at every level. So I think the garbage time stuff, even when you strip it out, I look at those 3 games that were right after Kyler Murray's injury, and it was a ton of promise. And then just circumstantially, like they couldn't overcome the missing pieces that they had over the final 9 games, and that it was all skewed by just jailbreak game script. But those first 3 games, I thought the adjustment period from when Jacoby Brissett took over, they were playing the style of offense that was really strong and was something that going to Detroit, and with the Detroit talent pool, I feel a little more bullish on this having success.
I'm really intrigued, man. I think that the run game could be like the best in the league. They brought in Cade Mays at center. They drafted a right tackle in the first round.
And remember, the back half of the year, their offensive line died.
Right.
Yeah. I've just really liked Petzing's run scheme. I remember each of the past 2 years just like nerding out with Dan and being like, look at all these pullers, all these cool plays they're doing here, misdirection and everything. And then it's kind of fallen apart because of injuries and lack of talent on the line. But I think he maybe has a different situation here where it's like, you go from freaking James Conner to Jahmyr Gibbs. You've got a better offensive line play. You've got a better quarterback and everything too. I think this is like one of the more overlooked ones. All that I ever hear people say is like that this could be good for Sam Laporta, which I think could be true. But I also just wonder if so basically it's like if Petzing isn't good, then I think Dan Campbell just takes over. And it was good last year when Dan Campbell took over, right? Like everything was Jamison Williams value through the roof when Dan Campbell took over. Obviously Jahmyr Gibbs too. And so with Petzing coming in, I think that there's the path to it being better for the things we've talked about. And then also for the fact that he uses a lot of like big formations and stuff with lots of tight ends. And that concentrates the targets even further onto the receivers and the running backs, I think. So to me, it's like it could get better. And even if it doesn't, we already have like some proof of concept that Campbell can probably do it if need be.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. It's going to be an offensive powerhouse for sure.
I mean, effectively, what does it mean? Because like just drafting
Jahmyr
anyway. Gibbs 101 and
Yeah.
St. Brown in the first round. Maybe Jamison Williams is just a good pick, and Sam Laporta is a good pick, and Goff is a good pick.
And there might be some value potentially to whoever ends up, like, I guess we're going to say but let's say it's Pacheco and he looks good in camp. There might be some value there as well. I think if this offense is what you think it could be, Jacob, in the run game specifically, which I agree with you on, there could be a little bit of value there having him as like a flex play.
Yeah, and they're in play, I think, to get one of these Cardinals guys that isn't going to make the cut.
Oh,
Right?
that too, yeah.
Like a James Conner. If James Conner is not on the Cardinals, I imagine he's going to have a Detroit Lions uniform on. Like almost immediately.
I could see that.
All right, real quick, I want to go back to these rankings that we made last year and point out that in the B tier, just below the Mike McDaniel, Matt LaFleur, and Ben Johnson, Liam Cohen tier there, that's where we had Todd Monken. That's where we had Kevin Stefanski. So they were there with Josh McDaniels, and they were there with Zach Taylor, who we have our qualms with. But if you just look at the freaking production year over year for fantasy, it's been insane. And it's an offense that's super concentrated. So we felt like we had to put him there. But that's a lot of respect for Stefanski and Monken. And they're both on the move. So I'm curious if you have any thoughts on either of them. We'll spend a little bit of time digging into them when I get into the Excel sheet. But do you have any thoughts on them and their new positions, Reeves?
Yeah, Monken definitely with Dan still just a guy that understands, and he's going to put his team in I think the best position at the time to win the game. Whether it works or not, like he's at least going to try. And I think with Stefanski at the end of the line, we kind of had a little bit of the questions about that as things progressed through Cleveland. I also think too, Stefanski, I'm interested for the second lifeline here because I think Stefanski and Kevin O'Connell particularly, I think they're both very good coaches that ended up with very young GMs that made a lot of questionable team building decisions. And I also wonder if we're going to be in that boat with Liam Cohen very soon because the 2 years of off seasons we had with Gladstone, they're very questionable decisions. And put these guys kind of behind the 8 ball. So I'm very happy to see like him get an immediate lifeline and a secondary chance. I when we get to the Cohen stuff, I do want to pitch something to you guys about the Gladstone stuff because I have some questions about that. But Monken in general, like we talk about all this stuff with Lamar. Like this is a guy. I mean, dude, he's been around forever. He coached under Lou Holtz. Like dude has been like so. Like I think this is a guy that's consistently shown adaptation, and the Browns added, obviously 2 top 40 pass catchers. They still have Fannin. They have Judy. They're trying to throw stuff at the offensive line. Will it work? They're throwing things at the offensive line.
Feels Houston-esque, Houston 2025-esque.
So I don't know if it's going to be I don't know if he's going to turn these guys into fantasy juggernauts. As a coach, I'm bullish, but is there a lot to squeeze here still? Because we're going to tier these guys for fantasy. Like how much, even believing in him, like to Dan specifically, because he's in the corner here, like how much do you want to bump him up in terms of these rankings?
I'm with you on that. I do have in the back of my mind the possibility, and I don't know if you're totally out on him, but
on Watson, you're going to bring up Deshaun Watson?
Yeah, I don't. I've been watching a little bit of these mini camp clips circulate around. I'm like, that was pretty good ball placement from Watson. That wasn't bad. Outside shoulder, outside
what are we
the
doing?
Numbers. Like that wasn't horrible. I still think he understands timing a lot better than any of these Browns quarterback, and we'll see about the rest. But ultimately, like if he can play at a decent level, let's just say.
Are you talking about Deshaun Watson?
I'm talking about Deshaun Watson. Yes, I'm talking about Deshaun Watson. This is not even the weirdest take you're going to hear on the show today from me. Later we're going to get to a new offensive play caller that I'm weirdly high on, and I think this team is like wildly underrated, and it's like no one's talking about them because it's an idiotic take, but we're going to get there anyway. But
there's always one every year of these teams.
of these weird teams. This isn't it. I'm going to have that later, but also, no Myles Garrett. Like the game script's going to change a lot in Cleveland. I don't think people are that aware yet, and I don't think people have caught up yet to how big this game script's going to change. In my mind, at least. Like, yeah, they acquired a really good edge for him, but like no one impacts the game like Garrett does. And changed and also losing Shelby Harris. Like they lost pieces. That defense is going to, in my mind, potentially fall apart without those 2 players. So then it's like, is Monken just throwing the ball 40, 50 times a game, regardless of who's back there? And it could be some more fantasy value than we expect. I don't know. It's just like a thought in the back of my head here with Cleveland.
You think this could be the Jacoby Brissett zone?
That's what I mean. Is it that's exactly like a Cardinals type situation? We're just chucking it around the yard, losing games 40 to 40.
But it's not going to be as concentrated, right? Like
that's probably
We knew every week the Cardinals were going to throw 50 times, and it was going to go to Trey McBride, and at that point, Marvin Harrison Jr. was out. So
yes. And unfortunately, I trust Brissett's arm more than Watson's.
There's no Jacoby Brissett.
Yeah. This is as sad as it is.
Jacoby Brissett's like 80% of Joe Flacco or something, and he's like 5 times better than all of the Browns if you combined all of their talents into one player. What are we talking about?
Yeah, just wait on Watson. Let's not totally give up yet. I'm not
Wait
totally,
on what?
There's nothing to wait on, I guess.
I mean, I think we did the quarterback rankings, and my take was just like, I don't think the Browns will win enough real games for one guy to start all year anyway. So
That's the problem. Yeah, right.
I'm not
Just
gonna
wait on Taylon Green. 18
Maybe wait on
drop after
Taylon
game.
Green. Yeah.
All right.
We'll be playing him in DFS whenever he
Oh
starts.
yeah. If Taylon Green ever starts a game, he'll be on one of my lineups.
I
for
want
sure.
to talk about Zach Robinson. If you guys are okay, moving on from the
Yeah,
Browns.
we'll move on from
Please save us from ourselves.
Okay, Zach Robinson in as OC for the Bucks. Before I dig into my sheet that I've teased 15 times now, do you have any thoughts on Robinson? Because like he spent time with McVay, and then he goes to Atlanta and is just like stuck with the weirdest quarterback situation imaginable. And it's like I don't really know exactly what to make of him. There's some interesting tidbits here, like Ryan Heath is interested in him because of motion-related reasons and stuff like that. Potentially pace of play.
Mhm.
His offenses have been hyper concentrated, but also like he's had freaking Bijan Robinson and Drake London. So any thoughts that you have on him, Reeves?
Yeah, I'm pretty bullish on this move because I don't think we saw Zach Robinson get to operate the offense he actually intended to run. Because when he took over, and remember they immediately signed Kirk Cousins in free agency, and there was probably a vision inherently to run that kind of McVayian, probably more 11 personnel at that time. He's probably going to take more of the 11 personnel stuff and have more of an in-rhythm pass game. But because Kirk Cousins could not move, he was forced to play under center coming off the Achilles. He wasn't able to play under center. And by the time Kirk Cousins was obviously benched, Michael Penix couldn't do it either. And Michael Penix is a terrible fit for that scheme regardless. Michael Penix is, big arm quarterback, wants to push ball outside the numbers, downfield, not hit anything in rhythm. So I don't think that we ever saw Zach Robinson have like the marriage of the type of quarterback play he envisioned having. He's going to have it with Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield, I believe, is getting a very adjacent system to the one he ran 2 years ago under Liam Cohen. And it makes me excited for the Bucks because the Bucks, had a ton of offensive line injuries. The offensive line, by just proxy, should be healthier. And then they've got this great wide receiver room. I think Baker and the Bucks passing game is one I'm definitely going to be in on, in terms of being very bullish on grabbing these guys in drafts. And I have been grabbing them in these best ball drafts, but managed leagues too.
I think so too. Like there's a lot of reasons it could get better. The coaching is definitely one. The offensive line could be healthier. Bucky Irving could be healthier. Baker Mayfield could be healthier. Emeka Egbuka could be healthier. Like there's so many paths to this being better. So I'm glad to hear you're tentatively in. It's just tough because he's one of these guys. We've got a lot of these McVay disciples, if you want to call them that, like that have spent time there that we don't exactly know who they are. But teams have continued to give them chances. So it's him, it's Nick Caley, it's Mike LaFleur are the ones that come to mind. I'm really interested to see what we'll get from them this year with them in more prominent positions.
Remind me real quick, when Robinson came over, did they also bring over, blanking on his name, the offensive line coach from the Falcons? Did he also, I think
he's with Baltimore.
He went with Baltimore. He went, okay, yeah, he went over there with Minter. Okay. So that would have been even more fun to have. And that also makes me even higher on the Baltimore Ravens run game than I already was. But as far as like what Zach and Robinson can do for this offense, I think I'm with you, Reeves. There was just so many factors I think that held back the Bucs offense from Bucky's health to the offensive line health, specifically the offensive line health. We get back a fully healthy offensive line with Wirfs and Barton there in the middle. Like I feel like you're right. This could be an offensive line and just a team that could be way more explosive.
Well, the same thing happened kind of a little bit. What happened with Matt Nagy? Because remember, like all offseason, the last year, the Chiefs were like, we want to throw downfield more.
Yep.
And that happened with Grizzard. When Grizzard took over the job, all he talked about was like, I want to throw downfield more. And what happened? Offensive line missed 3 guys. Evans got hurt to start the year. Yeah. It's like, dude, you got to calibrate. Like you can't, you have to abandon this. We have to abandon this go. Because the back half of the year when Baker got banged up too, like all of the accuracy stuff and it all fell apart. And that's what happened to Mahomes to a degree too. Obviously they had fewer injuries than the Bucs, but Grizzard got fired because Grizzard just ramrodded his approach through all of the things that should have said, dude, we got to start getting the ball out. We got to start adjusting. Like
even just like how he used Emeka Egbuka was in my mind was not good. Yes. He was used as that vertical outside receiver when he should be used in my mind as like a move Z. And that's something I think we'll see change a lot. He's the one I'm most excited about in that whole out of all. It's him and Bucky, I think, are both very undervalued. Of course, then in that case, if that's true, then Baker's probably undervalued as well. So I'm kind of with you. I'm in on this Bucs offense. I don't know where Jacob went, but I'm sure he'll be back soon.
And the defense for the Bucs is like the pass rush should be a little bit better, but losing Jamel Dean was massive.
Yes.
For them, their splits without Jamel Dean the past 2 years have been a disaster, and they really didn't replace him. Like they're gonna be, their cornerback situation is not good. The Bucs are definitely a team I could see being like a high shootout potential team.
I like that. I feel that as well. Though I do think they've done a lot on their defensive line.
But that's what I mean. It's going to be kind of like, because the Cowboys are another one of these teams I think improved defensively, but they improved in the way for fantasy football we want. We want defenses to stop the run.
Right.
And I feel like the Bucs are a team that are going to stop the run.
Right.
And remember the Lions were like this for a couple years, the past few years, where they were it was like, dude, you guys should think about being a little bit worse against the run.
Yeah.
Because you're just forcing teams to throw all over you.
It's true.
And
the Lions are playing like man behind it too.
And I feel like the Bucs, when you look at their front seven, they add Ashawn Robinson. Obviously, they get Reuben Bain. They draft Josiah Trotter. Right. They bring in Anzalone.
Right.
They're going to stop the run. But when you look at, dude, Zion McCollum, Benjamin Morrison, Jacob Parrish, like this is you want, like, we're going to be funneling teams to attack these guys.
True. It's a great point, especially if it's Todd Bowles too, so they're going to be playing some man behind. It's going to be interesting to watch how that operates.
Bowles is going to do his thing.
Yeah, exactly. He's not changing at this point in his career. He is who he is. All right, let's move to another play caller we're very excited about, which is Klint Kubiak. So I want to get your take on just where this Raiders offense is going to move in year one with Kubiak. And I guess for you, like, do you feel like, what are we going to get as far as quarterback goes? Are we going to get a lot of Cousins? Are we going to even get Cousins to start the year? Are we going to get a lot of Mendoza? If you look at the history of first overall quarterbacks, or even just like top 5, top 10 quarterbacks, we kind of go into the year every time the same way, like, oh yeah, there's a veteran there, he'll play. And then before we know it, like, this guy, he gets overtaken. Even last year, Jackson Dart's taken at 25 overall. It's week 4 and he's already starting. It's like the coach wants to put his stamp on the offense almost immediately. So where are you at with that situation?
Yeah, and then obviously bringing in an actual offensive line, a real offensive line coach with him. A 30-year tenured veteran offensive line coach.
They didn't want to retain Pete Carroll's son. I'm shocked.
Just in general, this is a camp battle we'll be watching all offseason, even before they drafted Fernando Mendoza, but they knew they were going to draft him because obviously they had the first pick. They had talked about, wanting to bring Mendoza on slowly. And remember, Mendoza is also going to be a guy going through, that's kind of the word of the day, the acclimation period. This guy took 6 career college snaps under center. Like, what does this offense want to do? Like, I do feel like Mendoza is one of these guys that is coachable, though. I think that's one of his real positive traits. Why to be optimistic? I feel like he is a guy that's going to be willing to adapt and do what the offense wants him to change about his game, and where some guys just can't, right? Because this is the player I am. What do you want me to do? What do you want me to do about it? If Cousins does start the year, obviously you get that opening game against the Dolphins, which is winnable. But then, I mean, there's not a lot of spots here where Cousins, I think, is going to survive a long time here, because you can maybe want to have Cousins to have a complete bridge year, but if you're not winning enough games, eventually Mendoza's going to play. Because after every loss, the first question Klint Kubiak's going to get after every game is win Mendoza, win number 1 pick. They they play the Chargers, they go on the road against the Saints, they got the Chiefs, the Patriots, the Bills, then the Rams. I've kind of thought week 8 is as far as they could take this thing.
Schedule.
Oh, it's brutal, dude.
I didn't realize your schedule was that hard.
It's absolutely a nightmare. So there's not great onboarding part for Mendoza either, because I think when Kubiak's getting those questions, he's be like, well, man, I'm not going to throw him on the road at New England or whatever. But so at the Jets in week 8, I thought it's maybe this as far as they take this thing if they're 1-6 or 2-5. I do think obviously there's going to be a lot of positives here. You add to the offensive line, they're going to try to play games this year 1, I believe, under Klint Kubiak, tight to the vest and just hope variant swings in their direction. Right. That's how it's going to be. And I think that's what you're going to see for Arizona too, with Michael Fleury. And honestly, in Miami, they're just not gonna be able to do it, I think, as well to a degree. But all those teams are they just want to try to play in as many rock fights as possible, I believe, and just hope they can steal a couple. That's basically going to be the philosophy, is just not get railroaded. Because we're going to see, it's a lot of Ash and Janty this year. a lot of Ashton Jeanty. You bring in Linderbaum. We know we're going to have and it's tailor made. If you want to have one of this copycat league where we know we're going to see more 12 and 13 personnel, the Raiders can do it. Like they're set up to structurally do this with Michael Mayer and Brock Bowers being kind of the versatile play here. So they're going to be, I think, very slow. I think that's what ultimately keeps me from thinking Bowers absolutely smashes to the degree like other people do, especially with getting Kubiak. I think he's going to be JSN. Yeah, pace of play.
Right.
And then also, like, you can't ask Bowers, even as good as he is, to just be Jackson Smith and Jigsaw.
Yeah.
Like, he's not he's actually not that player.
Yeah.
Kubiak will figure out exactly the things Bowers does well and put him in a spot to win. But I just don't think we're drafting JSN as Bowers, is all I'm saying.
Yeah.
I think
go for
it. With Kubiak especially, we fall into this kind of thinking trap with a lot of situations where it's like, well, he's this year's Amon St. Brown for Ben Johnson. He'll be in that role or whatever. I think with Kubiak especially, we've seen him be really adaptive depending on where he's at. So, like, I've got here the fantasy points on the screen. You see that the 24 numbers don't look good, and that's because the entire Saints team died after week 2. But when they were healthy, like early in the season, he was doing unforeseen ever before, like levels of combinations of both motion and play action on the same play. He was just breaking defenses with this stuff. And then he totally scaled back on that. He totally changed the offense depending on who was healthy. And then we see in Seattle, like, he scaled back on it even further. I thought for sure he was going to come in and be just spamming play action and motion and stuff. And it was more centered on like the personnel based stuff that he was doing to catch people off guard and stuff like that. He's used different types of players, different ways in terms of like going from Alvin Kamara to the backfield last year and everything. He's really interesting to me. And I think mostly I just have so much confidence in him to best position his players to succeed, whatever that means. And so with two very, very clear, like, players who look like generational talents as the building blocks here, I feel good placing a blind bet, even though like we don't know exactly what it would be. I'm fine with that leap of faith here.
Yeah, I'm with it. All right, let's move on to another coordinator here. One that I'm hoping
Are we moving these guys in tiers as we do these? Or are we
maybe
we're not doing tiers.
We're not doing the tiers.
I think maybe we can do that tier show in July if you want to come back.
Yeah,
on,
I mean,
Reeves.
we can just talk about, like, where would you put him though, in A or B? We're moving him up for sure. Or we put him in A or B?
I mean, I have him. So last year I came on the podcast and I was like, we've got these guys who I have a lot of confidence in, but we haven't seen enough of a sample size on it to know where to put them. It's Liam Cohen, Ben Johnson, and Kubiak. And that's basically how I hold him in that rarefied air with those guys.
But we're saying for fantasy though too, right? Like, who are we trusting really in that besides Jeanty and Bowers?
Yeah, I don't. Trey Tucker? Are you on the Trey Tucker train?
Oh, the Trey Tucker train. Well, I mean, for like
last year it was just concentrated, really. And that was a good thing though. Yeah. Like, it's not that we need him to produce 5 fantasy producers. It's like if he could produce a historically good wide receiver for fantasy, that's really impactful.
Yeah. I guess in that sense, I would probably argue for McDaniels, he produced a historically good pass quarterback for fantasy with Drake May. But that's another story. We can move on past that. I feel like it's a similar thing. It's like JSN was the big guy for Kubiak, I guess, last year for fantasy, and it was May for McDaniels. And it wasn't like Darnold was really that much of a fantasy winner at quarterback. But it's all right. We can move him into that tier. It's fine.
Right. Yeah, it's like May was really good for real life in terms of efficiency.
And for fantasy, though. He was the fantasy.
I know, but he wasn't a historical fantasy quarterback. He was just a good hit where he was. Like, he was great. But
so, Jacob, were you more bullish on Mendoza from a dynasty stance than a lot of other people were? A lot of people were just like, well, he's going to be a boring QB2. Like, I don't want to use a pick on that. Like, with the marriage of, no, he's going to start his career with Kubiak, were you more bullish and saying, like, hey, are you not factoring this in?
For sure, yeah. I think it's a great spot for him. I know that the numbers weren't great for Darnold last year, but I think that had a lot to do with them having like one of the nastiest defenses we've seen in a long time. I think that we could see good efficiency for the fantasy QBs here and potentially good overall numbers if required to drop back more, which could happen. I don't know what to expect from that defense there.
He had to adjust too. There was, I remember writing about this in the worksheet, during the season, there was a big section of the season where teams eventually got religion like halfway through the year and like, what if we didn't give up 40-yard touchdowns to Jackson Smith and Jigba? And they started seeing a lot more too high than they had earlier in the year, and they did adjust. They were still able to get Jackson Smith and Jigba the football at a 30% rate when teams started to calibrate. So that does make me a little more bullish. Just understanding, like you said, we're not expecting Bowers to be JSN, but neither is Klint Kubiak, I don't believe either.
Right.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah, no, it was really impressive that they were still able to get it to JSN because like the target rates for JSN were absurd. We never there's a reason why target rates typically cap around 30%. Like you can't realistically run an offense through a player that way.
Right.
It's just too predictable. But like even as defenses adjusted, he kept finding ways to catch them off guard. Yeah, I'm extremely high on him, and I do think Mendoza by proxy I feel really, really good about too. And yeah, I do think he's slept on a little bit for fantasy Mendoza because I do think he has underrated rushing ability too. And that's something we might see from Kubiak. I don't know that for sure because he's had freaking Darnold and Derek Carr. But we've seen that from some of these really good play callers is Liam Cohen, Ben Johnson. Like they've gotten more rushing out of their quarterbacks. I think that's something we could see from Mendoza. So yeah, I feel really, really good about Genty. I mean, another thing that people I don't think remember about the New Orleans days with Kubiak is Kamara came out and was lighting the freaking league on fire as a rusher in that scheme early on. And I think Kubiak is, I mean, this is obviously something that gets brought up a lot is like his dad and Shanahan's dad, like literally invented like what's working in modern offense and in the run game.
Yeah.
And what if he is freaking in the same vicinity as Kyle Shanahan or something? And it's just, we're very early into seeing that, like that is not likely, but that potential exists that we could see something like that built out here. And they've got number one pick at quarterback and then 2 generational type talents already on the roster. Like, yeah, I want to be high on them for sure. I think, yeah, A tier basically then to answer your question. Like, it's kind of like where we were with Liam Cohen and Ben Johnson last year, where it's like, we've seen enough. Yeah. I think the potential is there for him to be even higher. But this is his first crack at head coach. We'll see how that goes.
Let's talk Nick Caley. And what are your thoughts early right now for him? Reeves, and I saw this note from Jacob just to throw this on the top. He was last in motion at the snap in 2025.
I mean, you look at it's just disappointing. Yeah, I think Nick Caley, like, because the coaching tree comes from, I mean, pre-snap motion 21st, play action rate 19th.
Yeah.
And the bummer is when Stroud did have access to like those plays, he was excellent. When he get to use play action, 10th in the NFL in yards per pass attempt, 7th in yards per completion. He was 7th in yards per pass attempt when they use pre-snap motion, 9th in yards per completion. And there's enough talent on this offense, right? There is. Oh, yeah. Like it's outside of Nico, and health has been a problem the past couple of years, just keeping everyone on the field. But adding David Montgomery, the one pro is that like he did keep that man gap scheme. They just didn't have the personnel. They got rid of their 2 worst man gap run blockers. They said, get the hell out of here. You're not doing what we want to do. And they brought in the running back that was number 1 in the NFL in EPA in man gap runs last year in David Montgomery. So really good fits. I think if Noel and Higgins take a step forward and you just get, Tank Dell has is able to get on the field for a viable number of snaps. Like there's a lot of talent here for fantasy football. Probably, is the defense just too good for like, there'd be like a huge passing game breakout. And does Nick Caley want to increase these rates, right? Like it's, 1 year sample was very disappointing. And was it just based on because the personnel was banged up and the game script was here, or just like but the 1 year sample I was very disappointed in.
I'm a little, it wasn't bad. It was obviously a smaller sample size, but it wasn't what we were looking for. I'm probably a little more optimistic here, just based on what you said. They've really curtailed this offense to fit something very specific. You said David Montgomery, number 1 in power gap scheme. Well, Kalen Rutledge, their first round pick out of Georgia Tech, was by far in my mind, from my evaluation, watching all these guys for the Giants pod, like easily the best power gap interior offensive lineman in this class. Like they specifically handpicked him for this. And I think he'll start right away because he was that good. So I feel like we could see a little bit more like run play action type offense, which would be great for Stroud. Like we've seen him throughout the first 2 years, whenever he does run those deep play action drops, 5-7 drops, he can really hit his back foot and rip it. So I have a little more optimism about Houston. This year, I feel like they made some additions on the offensive line that could actually work. It wasn't just like, let's change out a bunch of guys.
Yeah, I still believe. I think Stroud's gonna have a really positive season too. As well. Will that lead to like a run out in fantasy football is the question mark because the defense is so good.
Yep, true.
I think
Right.
the defensive point is important. What I want to point out on Stroud was that there were some things that improved. Like this is the first time we saw him actually post a respectable sack to pressure ratio and stuff like that. They were focused on getting the ball a little bit quicker and stuff. So I do wonder if it was just kind of like first year and they had a lot to fix and there were a lot of problems and then they also had injuries. And so it's like, man, I got a really leaky boat here. If maybe we see them playing with a lead more because of the defense and healthier and feeling overall more sound in the run game and everything, then we do see more of that play action and motion and stuff implemented. Typically teams use that more when they're playing with a lead. So I don't know. Just I'm not quite ready to say like Nick Caley sucks, but I would agree it wasn't. You get really excited about these McShanahan guys or whatever, and it wasn't quite.
We'll
what
give him a TBD
you'd like
tier.
to see. Yeah.
The TBD tier.
Any thoughts on Michael Fleury?
Well, we did have a little sample with him. I don't know if you heard
Jets?
me. Yeah.
Oh, that was devastating.
It was devastating. And I don't know if you heard while you were gone, us like kind of just talking about like how we expect a lot of these teams, like how they structurally want to play. Like this is Arizona Cardinals, I believe, are a team that wants to play in a lot of rock fights. They want to play slow.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And obviously I know no one wants to hear that from a guy that, Trey McBride, who just ran 700 pass routes the year before. But they definitely, I believe, want to play slow. This offensive line also improved too in the offseason. Now they got absolutely railroaded though. Like we knew, like the NFL, they don't schedule the opponents. Like you get the opponents based on how you finish and what divisions you play. It rotates, but the schedule makers did the Cardinals absolutely wrong in how they structured their schedule. Dude, they play 3 home games in the first 9 games, and they opened the year against the Chargers, the Seahawks, the 49ers, the Giants, Lions, Rams, Broncos, Cowboys, Seahawks, Rams, Chiefs, Commanders, and Eagles before their bye.
Wow.
Like, dude, how does this team's gonna, I think they're gonna be forced to play 3 quarterbacks this year because the schedule's so bad and their record's gonna be so bad that they won't be able to play Carson Beck in like week 5. So I think they're gonna have to do like a baton pass to Minshew then to Beck. It's a disaster though. But like there is talent here. I think, like I said, the offensive line is improved. You have Marv and still Michael Wilson. You still have Trey McBride. You had Jeremiah Love and you have Tyler Algier. Like there is talent. There is talent, but I'm not ready to say just based on the layout here that like we're gonna have like, because I think Love from a fantasy value perspective, Love and McBride are already drafted high,
Right.
potentially even too high.
I agree on both.
So where are we getting the value from? It's got to be Marv or Mike or Wilson. And how bullish are you? Like, because I mean, Michael Wilson literally needed Marv to not be playing to even have the run out he had.
True. I think I'm out.
Yeah, it's one of those where it's like
completely.
It's really hard and really scary because there is a ton of talent, and if this is a good like coach, if he is like the next Klint Kubiak or something, then like that there could be huge hits here. But like all the infrastructural stuff, whether it's offensive line, who's the guy who did you bring in at OC? Does anybody remember?
Nathaniel Hackett.
Freaking Nathaniel Hackett. The Carson Beck pick, like there's so much here. I'm like, oh, this could be really gross though. Where like all these players suck for fantasy. Like McBride will probably be an okay accumulator for PPR leagues or whatever, but other than that, I really don't like it.
No, I think you convinced me to be completely out, especially when you consider what you said, which is true. The pace is going to be bad. Like they're going to be running a slow offense. That's really bad.
They're going to be doing the Michael Carter, Breece Hall game.
Yeah, right.
This is what's going to happen.
And yet, while also facing a ridiculously difficult run out from a schedule standpoint that you just went over, that wasn't just like a 4-game stretch. That was like
they got crushed.
10 games. That was like 10 horrible. But it's like they got crushed, but it's also like you have the Rams in your division and you have the Seahawks in your division. That's 4 games.
And the 49ers
defense will improve, right?
Yeah, because they just got crushed on injuries.
They got crushed on injuries. And like the Rams with Garrett and McDuffie are going to be probably as good as the Seahawks. So it's like this is just brutal run out. I can't draft any of those players.
I pitched a no Cardinals redraft policy. Obviously, in best ball, you can do whatever you want. But like, I manage leagues, I think, because you can make an argument the last quarter of the season, like post bye, is like okay if you have Jeremiah Love. But like, are you getting to the playoffs using a second-round pick on Jeremiah Love?
Good point.
I mean, I look at McBride's ADP. I'm below on McBride too because for the same reason. Like,
so out on McBride this year.
I mean, I'm not like he's probably going to compete in context of the tight end position. He will probably still compete with like being a viable tight end, but at overall draft cost, it feels
exactly
like
right.
it's over. It's an overpay.
I've been comparing him to Harold Fannin, where it's like this could get super ugly offensively, and like his value isn't necessarily on a per target basis. It's on a like just getting a ridiculous amount of targets.
Right.
And if that changes where he runs, I mean, he could run like this, he could run like 2/3 of the routes that he ran last year.
Yes.
And people don't understand what a massive hack that is to your fantasy points, just like cutting him off.
Well, the last 5 tight end 1 overall have just run the most routes at the position.
Really? That's unreal.
And McBride ran 121 more routes than the next closest tight end.
Yeah.
That's a crazy stat. I love that stat.
I tweeted it out yesterday. I had this tweet. You can find it basically at the top of my feed. He basically ran 22 games worth of routes last year for like an average like tight end 1. So you basically got 22 games out of him.
I check out this Harold Fannin profile if you guys haven't. The comparisons there are, I really think it's a pretty similar setup for this year, and people won't want to hear that or believe that because McBride put up such crazy numbers.
And he's a good player too. He's a really excellent player.
But so is Harold Fannin. That's what I'm saying. Is like potentially terrible quarterback play. I do think if Brissett's in and everything all year, then that's better than what Cleveland will have. But there's competition. People are all worried about Harold's like target competition. Is like there's freaking target competition in Arizona too. They just drafted Jeremiah Love and they've got the receivers. And then there's this where it's like if they do go to Carson Beck or something like that, or Gardner Minshew, and we get like 28 dropbacks a game, that's so much different than last year. The Cardinals last year were 5th in receiving yards produced, not passing yards, but like actual receiving yards produced. They were 5th. They were dropping back like crazy. They were 12th in total fantasy points produced last year. It could be way
doesn't
different.
Seem likely with LaFleur. That's a great.
I mean, just look at their schedule, man. Like it is like how does Brissett? There's no way Brissett makes it through the year.
No, there's no way. And then Beck is going to be really, in my opinion, really bad at the NFL level. We'll see if I'm wrong about that, but I don't think he has anything what it takes to be a quarterback at the NFL level. But with that said, also with Trey McBride, the last note on this, it's like one of the reasons I'm out on him. At no point in his career was he, including dating back to Colorado State, was he a touchdown maker. He had 1 his first year with the Cardinals, 3, 2, he had 11 touchdowns last year with that crazy pace of play, them being in shootouts and all those routes run. Like that's almost feels like a guarantee to go down this year with that schedule and with them turning to Beck and Minshew. So like that's going to kill his fantasy value as well, going back to that 5 touchdown range.
Arizona almost had 30 passing touchdowns. I think they had 20.
Yeah, they were a good passing fantasy offense last year.
That's
So
all right, it's time for the Excel sheet finally.
You teased it.
I want to talk about motion.
I
want to talk about motion here. Shout out our guy Ryan Heath, of course. So he's got the actual data on this. I do this every year, and I think he's showing something pretty similar. I want to talk about motion at the snap of the football specifically. He's got it as a 43% increase to fantasy points per route run. If you look at during snap motion, so you can filter this out on fantasy points data if you want to play around with it and see which teams have used it the most. I quickly was able to just like pull their data and make a rate stat for it and look at the percentage of motion at the snap on dropbacks last year. And it does boost efficiency, but I don't think that just because you don't use it a lot, that means that you're a bad coordinator or anything but I do think it's noteworthy when an offensive coordinator uses it a lot. So I've got here on the screen on the left side is the fantasy points scored over the past 3 seasons. And I've got it for non-quarterbacks as well, because I could not believe how high freaking Joe Brady continued to show up. I'm like, well, yeah, let's just Josh Allen. So like Joe Brady, somebody we haven't talked about at all today. Here's where he's at over the past 3 seasons: 5th in fantasy points last year, total offensive fantasy points, 10th in non-quarterback fantasy points. Before that, it was 6th in total fantasy points, 9th in non-quarterback fantasy points. Before that, it was 10th and 11th. So 11th at the very lowest for these Bills offenses. Obviously, Josh Allen is great and everything, but I don't know. Maybe that's noteworthy for DJ Moore. Maybe it's just Josh Allen and James Cook again. And then I'm
curious what you guys think about that though, because like when I wrote up my quarterback tiers, like I'm a little more scared of Josh Allen than I've been in previous years not taking him. Because you know how much, because there's like multiple layers here to where the Bills could throw more. Like one, they could just be better equipped to throw more because they have, you add DJ Moore, and then like I'm never like get in shape best of your life season, but like I think it matters for a guy like Dalton Kincaid, like adding weight.
Right.
I do think he's one of these players it does matter for. And then like, how much influence was, the way Joe Brady was calling games based on, Sean McDermott's influence. Cause remember, he replaced Ken Dorsey, who was kind of, throwing the ball a little more than Sean McDermott liked. And then, you have the defensive changes, McDermott coming. I think their defense is still gonna be good, obviously, and I respect Jim Leonard as well too. But there are just a lot of moving parts here. And then when you look at the Bills, like they're another one of these teams that just like their schedule's so much better in terms of teams that can push them than previous years, because obviously the Patriots made a jump and got better in their own division. But especially the back half of the year in the fantasy playoff season, like they face a lot of teams that can score. And we know when the Bills give up points, like what happens in fantasy football. Buddy, you better be prepared to combat Josh Allen. So like he scares me a little bit more because I do think there's multiple avenues for the Bills to throw a lot. And now you only have you have a firewall to draft Josh Allen. But if that does happen, then I do think DJ Moore and Dalton Kincaid are the benefactors to potentially being values here.
It's interesting because I've been thinking about this offense so much in terms of what we've seen from Joe Brady with McDermott.
Right.
And I just don't, and I have to kind of open my mind up to that other possibility because I've been so disappointed, I guess I should say, in how their passing offense has looked these last couple years with Brady.
But the thing is, when they do have to throw, they're highly successful at it. Still.
Right. Yeah. That's the point. Like, thinking about it, like Josh Allen with Brian Dable was ripping the ball all over the field. They can do it. So maybe that is an interesting point. Like they will have to do it more. Will they do it, or just will they want to do it more with Brady? Because like Brady did also run people forget this. He ran the Joe Burrow LSU offense. So it's like he obviously can rip it through the air.
Dan, without looking, where was Kellen Moore last year in total fantasy points produced?
Interesting. You made it a point earlier that it was basically just Olave who scored. We know the running back sucked.
And Juwan had a little.
Juwan had a little thing for us, maybe like a tight end 10 type of situation overall. I would say like 25th.
23rd last year. The year before that, it was 9th, but he was 20th in non-quarterback fantasy points. That was with Jalen Hurts, of course.
Yes.
So 22nd and 20th in non-fantasy quarterback points past 2 years. 16th the year before that. He has concentrated his offense around a few players who become really, really good for fantasy at times. But I just wanted to point that out because people were like clamoring to move Kellen Moore up the board. And I think we've talked about the Saints a lot this offseason, and for reasons that we're excited about things potentially getting better. Really young offensive line could be better. And we like what we see from Kellen Moore. Love his play designs and everything. Creates lots of space. But it's just like, I don't know. It's not like we're looking at freaking Ben Johnson, where he's like top 10, top 3, and like almost all of these metrics, So I don't know. Just want to point out, like, maybe let's just slow down a little bit on the Kellen Moore stuff.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah, I mean, he's been really good for wide receiver ones, in particularly because he moves his guy around the formation. That's why he was really good for even like a Devontae Smith the year prior, who had yet to like really play in the slot. I'm a little concerned, and I'm gonna get kicked off the show because it's Jacob's guy. Is just how much of what we saw from Tyler Shuck was just so coaxed out from Kellen Moore, which is a testament to Kellen Moore, but also concerning big picture because like Shuck can't hide this year. Like we put Travis Etienne on the roster, we had David Edwards, we had Jordan Tyson. Like this, you got to show us now that we in 2027 don't need to make a move. But if you look at his splits with and without motion, they are awful.
Shuck's not my guy. I just want to. Is that where we're at? Is that what you're thinking? Okay, Shuck. I think Shuck absolutely was propped up by what was around him last year, and could be even more so this year, and so that's why I'm intrigued. But Dan and
to a pro, like the outside of Olave, he had nothing.
Yeah.
Like at the time he took over, so like. But it's just like, it's like, Kellen Moore, I think, maxed out like what they could do, but because they're another gear to get with these guys. Like, how much better do they? Because they're a trendy pick, but when we're rolling this over to fantasy football, where's the value in the Saints offense?
Right.
I struggle to see outside of Shuck himself being a potential value. Like Olave has climbed right back to fringe wide receiver 1. We've got ETN, Achan, as an RB2 now is a pretty like a top 15 pick, and then Tyson's a borderline top 30 pick at wide receiver. Like,
you're not getting him cheap.
Where are we getting the value in this offense? If we believe in Kellen Moore, like where can we squeeze it?
And everyone loves this stretch that Shuck had at the end of the year. Well, Carolina, Jets, Tennessee, Atlanta. That was those were the defenses he really did the most damage against as well, which I'm very skeptical about Tyler Shuck and this Saints offense for fantasy. I don't foresee myself buying into pretty much any of it besides potentially Olave.
Alrighty, I want to get through a little more of this with you, just show you what popped up to me, what stood out. So here's Drew Petzing. Last couple of years here, he's been 12th in fantasy points, 13th in fantasy points produced. And that's above LaFleur, even. Like, that's above Tom Monken last year. He's got some advanced stuff too. I'll get to the stuff on the right of this sheet in a moment here. McDaniels, to your point, was extremely high last year. It wasn't just the quarterback fantasy points. And I'm like, if it does get concentrated at all more, that would be awesome. Like, if one of the running backs gets hurt, or if AJ Brown like kind of consolidates Booty and Diggs' role kind of into one, there's some paths to it being more meaningful for fantasy than just like this massive amount of points that's spread among a bunch of players. But we'll see on that. I'm curious if y'all have any Shane Steichen thoughts. We haven't really talked about him much. He was 8th in non-quarterback fantasy points last year. The 2 years before that, it wasn't great, but I think there's a lot of reasons why. Do you have any thoughts on Steichen, Reeves?
I still remain overall pro. I mean, these things give us some really good pockets. But the big factor is just, the Daniel Jones factor.
Yeah.
We've seen Daniel Jones pop up on our radar, and he was drafted high for a reason. Like, we know there is, he can to bring Dan into this conversation.
He was drafted high by one team.
I mean, but again, 7-1 last year, they were playing really good football in terms of having him operate the offense. When the offense was running the way it was intended to run as an apex outcome, it was really good. And you remember, and there was some schedule stuff in there, but like, they went toe to toe with the Broncos, right? Like, remember that Broncos game? Like, they couldn't stop them. When they were running the RPO game and getting Jonathan Taylor, right? That was all working. And when that kind of all started to fall apart, we saw some of the turnovers. And then when they had to pivot away, it all fell apart, right? Like, it was a house of cards. And that's kind of what happened with him a little bit with the hurt stuff too, right? Like, it was really good when it was managing on script and it's all working, and then off script we haven't seen it. So I don't know if it's just all quarterback play, but he's given us pockets where the proof of concept is really good, and then does he get an incomplete because the quarterback play has kind of nicked some of it?
I think that's what people are debating, and it's interesting because I think the narrative is mostly focused and decided on like, oh, the only reason it fell apart in Indianapolis was the quarterback injury. But if you look at it, the Steelers and Chiefs game, while Jones was still playing, was when it really started to collapse. So that's the question. With that said, though, like, I actually watched the tape last year. Jones played great football. Like, I'm out on Jones. I've been very anti-Jones my whole life. I think he was downright horrible with the Giants, no matter what anyone says on tape. But he was really good, downright good with the Colts last year. The ball placement was better than I've ever seen it, especially on the vertical game. It was like night and day from the year before. So how much of that is just confidence? How much of that is just like trusting the pocket that he had in Indianapolis, which was like you said, Steichen does a really good job of giving great pockets for these quarterbacks. Maybe it's because of the scheme, because of the motion, because of the run game. I don't know. I will say this. They did lose Braden Smith, their right tackle, this offseason. Didn't think they really did too much to improve their O-line, Reeves, right? So maybe that is one that we have to keep an eye on. Like, if that O-line collapses, I'll tell you this. If it's Jones without a line, that offense is going to be a disaster for anyone who buys into Taylor or anyone really on that offense.
And I mean, you look at it from the whole offensive side. I mean, losing Michael Pittman, I think, is a big deal for this offense. You guys know I have a huge Josh Downs affection, and I'm happy that he's going to have an opportunity to at least, open up his route tree. But
it's a Josh Downs show.
But, is like this offense going to put him in that spot still? Like, he's going to have opportunities, but like the offense has to be operating, I think, on schedule. If this turns into just a drop back Colts game, I think it's bad, right?
Yes.
Like, it's probably going to be bad.
100%.
And Jonathan Taylor, who's also a first-round pick, like, he needs this thing to be working for the type of fantasy player he is. I mean, just look at his splits when the Colts win or lose, right? Like, he has some of the biggest, the starkest splits of the success of the team is driving his fantasy ceiling. So, I mean, if the Colts being bad, I think is genuinely concerned. And you haven't even talked about the defense, right? Like, the defense, they lose
defense
Nick Cross,
could be worse
like,
than the NFL,
the defense
legitimately.
is definitely going to be worse this year. So, I mean, obviously they get Sauce back, which is a big deal, but I think the Nick Cross signing was one of the most underrated signings that the Commanders made. They have a lot of moving parts on defense. They're counting guys like Arden Key, and Akeem Davis-Gaither like to come off to contribute.
Buckner needs to be healthy this year for them to have any shot.
I'm nervous, especially when you pair the injury that Daniel Jones is coming off of and how things ended. The whole thing feels very fragile to me for the Colts.
Yeah, especially for JT. That's what I'm thinking listening to all this. We just had Ryan Heath on for that tight ends episode, and we talked about Warren. We talk about Josh Downs every day, of course.
And Warren completely was relying on the RPO game year one.
Yep.
Like when the RPO game died, Warren died.
Yeah. Ryan's sentiment was basically like the pricing on these guys doesn't make sense. Either like Jonathan Taylor's way overpriced or the pass catchers are way underpriced, because people are like pricing JT as if it's going to be last year's early season offense, but pricing the other guys as if it's not. And I think it's probably more likely that JT is just kind of way overpriced is where my head's at. I'm glad that we got to talk through that, because I was looking at this and it's just like a reminder with Steichen that like last year was awesome, and we'll get into the advanced reasons why. But like the 2 years before that, 25th and 19th in fantasy points, So like if he's not a miracle worker, like we saw Kevin O'Connell drop to 28th last year in fantasy points. If the quarterback position gets bad enough, or the offensive line or whatever it is, he can't just work his way around that. One guy who he's been in really good situations, obviously, but has been able to just consistently put up crazy points every year has been Johnson, of course. He's the only one here who's top 10 in non-quarterback fantasy points in each of the past 3 seasons. The other two who are top 10 in total fantasy points, including the quarterback, each of those seasons are Kyle Shanahan and Joe Brady. It's those two and Ben Johnson. And then guys who have been top 10 in 2 out of those 3 seasons are Zach Taylor, Brian Schottenheimer, actually, both 23 and 2025. I don't know how much of the 23 credit belongs to him necessarily, him and Mike McCarthy there, but I do think he had a hand in it. Top 2, top 3 type of seasons in terms of fantasy points produced overall. Sean McVay also top 10 in 2 out of the past 3 seasons. In 2024 wasn't quite as good. And then Todd Monken has been top 10 in 2 out of the past 3 seasons. Kevin O'Connell has been top 10 in 2 out of the past 3 seasons. And then Liam Cohen, of course, second in fantasy points in 2024 with the Bucks, 9th with the Jaguars last year.
Let me pitch to you guys the Liam Cohen thing. I just want to get your guys' take on it.
Yes, I've been waiting for this.
Yeah, because all they've talked about all offseason. So, you go back to last year's Jaguars. They were, they really struggled the front half of the year, and it's because they just didn't find a home for everyone right in the offense. And they're one of these teams that had like a real sliding doors moment that kind of unlocked the offense, which is kind of wild to think about. But when this Travis Hunter injury happened, it really kind of was the sliding doors moment for this offense, because at that point of the year, Parker Washington wasn't playing. They were playing Brian Thomas Jr. in a position that he wasn't, successful at, and really not geared towards playing from a play style stance. And they didn't have Jacoby Myers. So Travis Hunter goes down during that bye week. They make the trade for Jacoby Myers. BTJ is still not completely healthy coming out of the bye week. They play Parker Washington full time. They kind of find the home for all these guys where it's all supposed to fit together. And then Trevor Lawrence turns into like this league winner down the stretch. They completely just fry everyone. They went into Denver and put 30 points up on them. And it's like, all right, you found the sauce, right? I have it. Before their bye, they were 27th in points per drive. They then after that, they were 25th in passing plays gained of 10 or more yards. And then after that, they went to 3rd in the NFL in pass plays gained over 10 or more yards. And they went to 3rd in points per drive. It's like a seismic shift. But they figured out by default, like, hey, we're an 11 personnel team, our best outfit. Like, the offensive line's still not good. It wasn't good last year. The run game was terrible the back half of the year also. And they were like, we're an 11 personnel throwing team. And this year, the first thing they do is they come out and talk about, we want to add tight ends. And James Gladstone's reasoning was, the rest of the league is doing it. We want to keep up with the trends. That's the dumbest reason to do it. It's the dumbest reason to do it. If the Jaguars are going to play more multiple tight end sets at the expense of having their best unit on the field, which is Brian Thomas Jr. at the X, Jacoby Myers in the Z, Parker Washington and the Z slot hybrid, to get Tanner Koziel or the other tight end that they got, I forget his name, Like this is not the way to play football. This like structurally. So I'm very curious to see what wins out. Liam Cohen understanding like Liam. Hey, no, we're not doing that. We're gonna do what works for us and what's best for our team. Or do they come out and start this year and try to be like a running team and like a heavy personnel team because the rest of the leagues? I feel like it's gonna be a detriment. Like I'm very curious to see what wins out here.
Borkature, right? Something like that.
Yeah, Borkature, Nick Borkature.
Yeah. No, I've talked with a few people about this offseason. I think Dan and I have talked about it too. It's very weird what it does. It feels like a coach and GM not being aligned. I wonder if those two just kind of have the biggest egos on the planet and they're each just going to do their own thing. And so who actually makes the decisions? I would think
that's why it reminds me of the Kwesi Andrew Barry Senate layouts.
Yeah. It's interesting.
I think we're going to get into the season and see them lean on the pass is my guess. Maybe they start to try the running stuff at the beginning of the year, but their personnel is, like you said, built for the pass. It worked last year. There's proof of concept. And like, if you look at what Liam Cohen has said this offseason, it's all been just gushing about the receivers and how he sees different ways to maximize their skill sets, whether it's Parker Washington or BTJ. So that's where I'm at. Is I think there's this potential for it to get really, really good because they could get in a lot of shootouts, and they've got these awesome players, and it did all come together last year. And then Liam Cohen is really that good. But yeah, if they go with the big tight end sets just to keep up with the times, or whatever, it could be a big disappointment.
And that's what I'm very interesting to follow. One of the big thread lines of the season is going to be the heavy tight end, the heavy personnel. So because some teams are suited to do this and some aren't, and there are going to be some teams that fall into the trap of they shouldn't be doing this. We talked about the Raiders being a team. The Bears are clearly a team, and the Bears did it at the end of last year. Like they're one of the teams. Like, and you know, you have both chess pieces. You have Cole Kmet who can be in line, and then you have your chess piece and Loveland who can play in line, then flex out. And it's going to happen that way because when you look at the way the dominoes fell for the Bears, they get rid of DJ Moore. Well, we already knew he was getting elevated because of DJ Moore. It's Luther Burden, but they never tried to replace the receiver in the 3 wide receiver stuff. It's going to be Colston Loveland.
Right.
So that's why you could be more bullish on Colston Loveland and like this working out. But like the team like the Jaguars, it's like, man, if you want to do this, this is worse for your team. Don't do it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see if that's where they're going with it. I still have faith as well as Jacob.
Yeah, I do too. It's just
it's something to note. Yeah. It's interesting. Any other takes on these corners? I have one hot take that I've been waiting to get out.
Right. Yeah. Let's hear that. And then I'll get into some of the data on these guys.
Okay. I'm going to be a lot higher on an offense for fantasy across the board that in my mind is making the biggest jump from play caller to play caller, in the sense that the last play caller they had was as bad as it gets for a passing game. And this new play caller they have leans a lot on 11, spreads it out, has been good for passing games. I think the quarterback, I'm going to see if you guys can guess it. Do you guys know who I'm at yet?
I would. Are you doing Dayball?
No, not this. I am, but this is not who I'm talking about. So let's keep going. I'll give you a couple more clues. I think the quarterback has been written off completely, but when I actually go back and we watch the tape for BTB,
it's not Stroud.
Oh, it's the Steelers.
It's the Steelers. I think a lot of people are sleeping on the Steelers, man. I think the jump from Arthur Smith to McCarthy is something that people are not crediting enough in the passing game. I think Rodgers is still seeing the field better than 90% of the quarterbacks and can throw the ball better than 90% of the quarterbacks. Can't move, cannot do bootleg stuff with him. You need to keep everything on script. He finally actually has some receivers that I think will work. Like Pittman is better than people realize. Jeremy Bernard is a great mix in there for 11 personnel. And then it's Metcalf, who I'm not as high on, but he can still play. He can play football.
Yeah.
Their O-line continues to improve. It just continues to get better and better. They're adding pieces to it. And now some of these younger guys are coming into their own, may take a huge jump there. But biggest thing is going from Arthur Smith to McCarthy for me in the pass game. McCarthy's been really good for teams' passing games. He's not a good head coach, but he's, in my mind, a good offensive play caller, specifically in the passing game, more so than the run game. I kind of love the Steelers for fantasy this year. I'm not going to lie.
For what it's worth, the Deshaun Watson crap was way grosser than this. Okay? I mean, Deshaun Watson's going to be 31 years old and hasn't been good in 6 years.
Rodgers can still throw the football, boys.
Right.
He can.
Yeah.
My question with it, because when I went under the hood on this too,
Yeah.
I was like intrigued, but I just don't know if Aaron Rodgers has any interest in like playing downfield and outside the numbers anymore.
I can
That's my
understand that.
concern. Like he has no interest in getting touched right now.
It's true.
Like at this stage of his career, like I mean, yeah, some of this stuff wasn't Arthur Smith induced. Like some of the quick
Was
times,
Rodgers.
like,
I think that's fair.
And I'm worried about like the marriage just isn't the same as it was a decade ago. You know, that's my only one concern. But I do agree from a personnel stance, they're in a lot better spot if you can get Rodgers to kind of not play in a similar style that like he has. Like it just seems like he's just so unwilling to hang around the pocket anymore and push the ball vertically. He definitely still has the arm strength.
Right.
And the arm is good. And there were points last year, even in the Arthur Smith scheme, like there were high points. There were high points.
Yeah.
Like I agree with you. I don't think he's like just a vagabond. I'm just worried that like he has any interest in like structurally
Getting
like
hit.
Like willing to hang in the pocket and throw some of these like deep digs and so like I mean he threw so much stuff just at the line of scrimmage and like because like they use DK Metcalf as like a like a tertiary like shallow wide receiver.
Wide receiver,
like,
right?
What
that
are
was
we doing?
an issue.
Like what are we doing?
Agreed
right
on all of that. We'll counter that by saying
Yeah.
McCarthy's scheme has been pretty much quick hitting every step of the way. Even the guys that offshoot from like Ben McAdoo, it's all been spread it out 11, find your matchup, usually in the slot, and just hit that thing right away.
Yeah.
It would give it in the space and let it go from there, which I kind of think fits perfectly with what Rodgers is as a quarterback right now.
Who do you actually want to draft?
I'm okay with Pittman. I like Pittman at cost.
Okay.
I think Metcalf's way too low for what he should be. And maybe Jeremy Bernard. And honestly, 2 QB leagues, I might be the guy who drafts Aaron Rodgers, to be quite frank.
For me, it's actually the running backs.
Okay.
I think that we might just get more play volume, and if either one of them goes down with an injury, the other one would stand to benefit in a big way. And I think Warren could get a lot of targets. But I know that you've kind of been low on him, so I was curious. Yeah, I think Pittman could make sense. I think the target share is going to come way down for Metcalf. I'm not really interested in going there, but I mean, he could get there,
So
you know.
cheap though.
Yeah.
Anybody
Reeves?
4.
I mean, I haven't really been drafting any of these guys.
Nobody does.
I agree. There's contingency upside for the running backs because if one guy has the bulk of the carries, the problem is they're kind of nebulous in terms of ADP. People are treating them. And the other thing too is when you talk about like these backfields, they're these nebulous backfields where it feels like just either guy could play any down or distance are really tough for fantasy. Like we love these compartmentalized backfields because it's like, all right, we could try to project some game scripts because we did this the back half of the year with Dowdle and Chuba Hubbard where it's just like, if it's a hot hand situation, it's like the worst, right? Because it could just be anyone. That makes it hard to like project on a game-to-game basis. But I will say though that there is talent here. It's frustrating again. I think if you're a Steelers fan, like this is the direction they tried to go, where it feels like we're just not gonna try to really progress. We're gonna try to procrastinate. But I mean, I can at least see it. There's talent here, and the defense is still very good.
I just feel like I expected to see something based on what I was told different than what I actually saw when I watched Rodgers last year. That's all.
Yeah, he still played. It's just like I said, he's no interest in getting touched. He was mad.
Doesn't want to get hit. That's a problem.
He was mad one of his own offensive linemen touched him after in a celebration last year. Like, don't touch me, man. I won't be touched.
That line could be really good this year. We'll see. Anyway, let's get into some coaching tendencies.
That was too funny. The Rodgers thing, the celebration.
I
was watching that live. It absolutely died. All right. Let's look at motion at the snap rates. Zach Robinson, number 1 in this rate last year, number 4 in this rate in 2024. He also produced the 6th most non-quarterback fantasy points in 2024. So he's moving over to Tampa Bay. He didn't use a lot of play action, which was a surprise, coming out of the McVay system. But I do think that had so much to do with the quarterbacks.
The shotgun dropbacks.
He did use a ton of motion at the snap. So I think he's really interesting. You see the play action rates are really low here. But yeah, like the under center stuff. What are you saying? Something specific about the shotgun? Just like that he had to be in shotgun and pistol?
Well, we kind of talked about just why he was in shotgun so much, but when you play in shotgun, you don't run play action.
Right. Yeah, for the most part. So I mean, there's a few like Indy does it a little bit, Philly does it a little bit, but mostly.
But that's like RPO stuff that gets counted as play action.
That's fair. Ben Johnson, number 2 in motion at the snap each of the past 2 seasons. Shanahan up here as well, of course. Mike McDaniel up here. Todd Monken has been doing it more lately. Monken's so interesting. I was digging into like the run game stuff. His run games have been really good since Georgia on, and his background is like in passing. Maybe it's just he's had some really talented running backs, but even like the Gus Edwards season in 2023, first year with Monken, was like by far his best season. Gus Edwards. Matt LaFleur uses motion to the snap a lot. Liam Cohen uses motion to the snap a lot. KOC, of course, does too. Joe Brady has done it more than I realized. And then like you get into this middle range, which is kind of Kellen Moore. Shane Steichen, Kevin Stefanski did it a little bit more last year. McVay doesn't do it as much as I would have expected in terms of the actual rate. I thought he would be higher. Is there anything you want to talk about here, Reeves? Klint Kubiak, middle of the pack, but again, we've seen it be extremely high at times, and then lately not so much.
No, I think it's basically a lot of the guys you expected, right? Like I said, I continue to like at least keep the door open for the Zach Robinson stuff.
Yeah.
So,
I'll track this. I'll track this at the beginning of the season for sure because it is important and has boosted fantasy production a lot. So we'll be talking about this on Beyond the Box Score for sure.
And I'm also curious to see how this evolves from a defensive stance because this was the cheat, right, to counter the Vic Fangio stuff in the pattern match. It was like the old school bunch, right? Like remember when, to counter. Why is his name eluding me? The most famous head coach in Alabama history. Gosh, why can't it? Oh,
Saban?
It's killing me. Yeah, Nick Saban. And then Nick Saban came out. It was like, well, we know how to stop bunch. That was like basically when pattern match like just kind of took off. And then pre-snap motion was like, all right, how can we get tells? And Mike McDonald has kind of been at the forefront of kind of being stopping this. Like we don't care. Like we'll have a guy following. We'll change our coverage. Like it does. We will give you no tells. Like and so I'm very curious if like Mike McDonald is like the next evolution of like the Fangio, where he's the copycat for defense, like a McVay was on offense. Because Seattle, if you look at the Seattle stuff, they had the highest throw rate to open receivers, and it's because you threw the ball to where they wanted you to throw the football. And I'm very curious, like if that continues to happen. Like Jesse Minter was this way too with the Chargers. Like, so this, I'm wondering if like the pre-snap motion is going to continue to be as prevalent for fantasy football as Mike McDonald kind of expands like the copycat of like his style of defensive philosophy. Because we still didn't get an influx of offensive talent this year through the draft. Maybe we have to wait one more year. It still feels like we're very much in a defensive meta right now.
Yeah. To be clear, you're saying that Seattle's defense had open targets at the highest rate against them.
Because you threw the ball where they wanted you to throw the football. And like that's what I wonder if we see a lot more of like that getting copied. And there was a big thread I'd have to pull up here about how they were one of the best too against motion because they would give you tells that were false tells. And Brian Flores has adopted some of this too. So it's going to be interesting to follow pre-snap motion and to see if it like continues to be like this hack. Play action, I think, is always going to be a hack just because there's indicators that like the defense has to respect, whereas motion is not always the case.
For sure. So the play action leaders, it's McVay at 1, Ben Johnson at 2, Joe Brady at 3, up from 25th in terms of the percentage of dropbacks and involved play action. That stood out to me for sure. You see Shane Steichen up here, Mike McDaniel up here, Brian Schottenheimer used it way more last year. I really liked what Schottenheimer did last year. Way more horizontally breaking routes for George Pickens than we've ever seen from him. Who he's typically been stuck on the outside, working down the field. Way more play action, a little bit more motion. It was good stuff in Dallas. Klint Kubiak used play action a lot, of course. Kevin O'Connell, Matt LaFleur, Drew Petzing. Man, Joe Brady, I don't know. He keeps showing up here like he's one of the three, with the other two being freaking Shanahan and Ben Johnson, who's been top 10 in fantasy points produced each of the past 3 seasons. And he's doing some of the stuff that we like. He's got a lot of talent on this offense. I think he gets a little bit overlooked for whatever reason. Liam Cohen, not quite as high, like him and Shanahan, Stefanski. Some of these guys I thought used more play action. I'm curious if you have any takes on that, Reeves. Like, here's the bottom of the list here. Zach Taylor, of course, never does it. Kellen Moore, not so much last year when he leaves Philly, so he doesn't do as much of that RPO stuff with Jalen Hurts. It's more straight dropback game.
Yeah, I don't really have a tell. I think it's just like the Jaguars were just generally, like I said, living in 11 at the last point of the year. And they obviously played a lot of 11 with the Tampa Bay the year before that too. But backfield was obviously a lot more productive, so you'd expect some more play action there. But
That makes sense. All right. Then I have the total number of under center dropbacks. Let me fix the presentation here real quick. Here we go. So it's Ben Johnson, KOC, Sean McVay, Klint Kubiak doing it a lot. And then, like I said, Drew Petzing doing it a lot, really showing up here. Where's Petzing at? Yeah, first in under center dropback rate, and then 13th in under center dropbacks overall. So to me, that's saying he's under center a lot, and particularly he's using it as a way to kind of disguise the dropback game and help the dropback game. Mike McDaniel's another guy who shows up. Shane Steichen, another who shows up this way.
He's getting Jared Goff,
Yep. Matt LaFleur as well, where it's they're doing their under center dropback rate is noticeably higher than their actual number of under center dropbacks. So it's a bit of a disguising type of a situation. Clint Kubiak does it a lot too. Joe Brady is under center a lot, but is running the ball more often. Schottenheimer definitely in 2025 did a lot more than he did in 2024. I think he's up there. I think if we do redo this, Schottenheimer, I'm going to be pushing very, very high. I mean, the production speaks for itself. Second in non-quarterback fantasy points in 2023, then 12th in 24, and then third in 25. That's about as good of a recent resume as anybody we have.
And he's a guy that's adapted, I think, from personnel and with where he was earlier in his career. He's a guy that's constantly changed from the Seattle days.
Yeah, so different from what he called in Seattle. Huge jump.
The last one I would point out is Stefanski was first in under center dropback rate in 2024. Not quite as much last year, but I think that had a lot to do with just the mess that he had on his hands there. Did you have any thoughts on? Let's wrap with some of these new coaching hires. So Dan brought up McCarthy. We've got Stefanski and Tommy Rees moving over to Atlanta from Cleveland. Former coach of the year, what is there anybody here? Start with Stefanski because I'm curious. People are just kind of assuming that Kyle Pitts is going to get this boost because Stefanski has used tight ends a lot. Do you feel like he fits into that?
Because I still think the best player in that area of the field is Drake London.
Okay.
And we saw that with Pitts. Pitts was a ghost until Drake London got hurt last year. So I mean, it's tough to really be bullish on those splits because how much upside do we have on a weekly basis with these quarterbacks, right? It all just comes back to these quarterbacks, and it's better than what he had in Cleveland last year, right? But these are still two quarterbacks that I think are incomplete players, and for different reasons, other than both being left-handed. They're complete opposites. You've got one guy that has kind of been coaxed to the maximum degree he could be and getting the ball out of his hands, but when Tua has to hold the football, it's a problem. It's problematic. I think he's a guy that can play on time. It'll be better than what he had from Dylan Gabriel, again, another left-handed dude, last year in this offense. If he's the starter, but do they win enough games to where we don't see Penix at some point? And then Penix, I just don't think has the in-rhythm game to operate the way Stefanski does. Just Deshaun Watson didn't have the in-rhythm game, or Shedeur Sanders didn't have the in-rhythm game, and Gabriel just didn't have the talent to do it. So I just think it's hard from a quarterback stance to really judge him. So I think he's getting another set of quarterbacks that just don't really fit his system. I think you can squint and say Tua does, but I just don't think Tua has the overall arm strength and needs so many things coached to him at this point.
Do you have any Zachariah Branch thoughts? I know that this is off the board, but I wonder if he maybe makes more sense just the way that I dug into the Browns offenses a little bit over the past 4 or 5 years. I did it last year, and I was he kind of focuses on two guys, Stefanski typically, and it's more of a deep intermediate play action target and then a shorter catch and run type of guy. And that was how Pitts was used last year a lot, but I just don't know if that's really what he's that great at. I think he's good if you can get him moving horizontally and then catching and running that way. But if you're talking about static, catch the ball and turn around and run on screens and stuff, that feels like it's clearly Branch over him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, Branch was a guy that, got those manufactured touches for a reason. The question, the hurdle I have for Zachariah Branch from a fantasy football stance is twofold. One is just how many guys down the offensive order do we think are going to be able to be viable like on a weekly basis in this offense. Like we know Bijan Robinson and Drake London are capable. Do we get a third guy? That would probably be Pitts then, right? And then are we talking about a fourth guy? And then just can Zachariah Branch play enough snaps? Because this guy is 5'9", 177 pounds. When they're running the ball, he's not gonna be in the game. I think he's gonna be a guy that's like a high target per rate route, because it's like he'll have stuff that's going to be designed for him. But is he just getting the raw amount of passing snaps? Because I do think we'll see when the Falcons are in, 1 to 2 wide receiver sets, Jahan Dotson's going to be on the field. So that's the questions I have for him. I have no problem with anybody throwing a dart on him because of where he goes in drafts. Like I'm not going to push back on anyone's like 18th round pick, but those are the hurdles I think he has from like having an absolute run out to where like you would use him on a weekly basis in a lineup league.
Yeah. I'm wondering if he might affect Pitts. I'm having such a hard time with Pitts because, like, on paper, he just looks like a good pick. Like, all the stuff that we dug into with Ryan in terms of what predicts future fantasy scoring at tight end, like, he checked all those boxes. And, of course, a lot of that came with London off of the field. But I do feel like this might be a really, really focused target distribution because of the receivers. Like you mentioned, Jahan Dotson had the lowest. His target per route run rate was 8% last year. He was targeted on 8% of his routes. It was the lowest of anybody other than Arian Smith from the Jets out of like 120 receivers or something. Like the other receivers, Olomide, Zacchaeus. So it's like if those guys are out there with London and Bijan and Pitts, it feels like it's going to be hyper focused on those players. If Stefanski brings a level of confidence to the offense and is better, or even if just Tua is fine compared to what they've had with Stefanski, then it might be a pretty good setup for Pitts. And then there's also the contingent upside. If London does go down, then we get what we got last year, where it's like, well, now he's like a top 3 or 5 tight end, I don't know. I feel like people are so quick to just be like, well, the splits with London on the field were terrible, so he's a terrible pick. And it's like, I actually wonder if he might be a decent pick because he's cheaper than that tier of tight ends that we feel like has upside. He's cheaper than all those guys for the most part.
Yeah, I think it's just like he goes into like kind of like a purgatory zone, right?
Yeah.
Like it's kind of both angles are kind of being priced in. And I think most gamers that play fantasy football have a top-down philosophy of early tight end or wait on tight end.
Right.
Like
We're typically best.
And he's in the middle, right?
Typically best avoiding that range. And so that it might just be as simple as that. This is just the stage of the offseason we're in, right? Where it's like I'm overthinking
it is a bummer,
Arizona Cardinals and Atlanta Falcons.
It is a bummer though, because I do think there's a place like in the multiverse where like Pitt stays healthy, lands in like a top-down scheme that like coming into the NFL that like was really beneficiary to him. It just like he got lost in the sauce a little bit.
Dan, you have any thoughts on any of these guys we haven't talked about, whether that's Dayball, Nagy, Slowick in Miami, Frank Reich in New York with the Jets?
I expect Reich is probably the one I'm most curious about. I expect we'll get a lot of running from Slowick in Miami, probably to the negative. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Now, like he wasn't able to do it in Houston because they fell behind so often to 3rd and 7, but like, will he be able to get in better situations with HN just being as good as he is? That'll be interesting. Get them into 3rd and manageable. But I think the focus there is a run game. Dayball's interesting to me because I think a lot of it's dependent to me on how fast Cam Ward can get attuned to what he wants to do, Dayball. But there is some upside there for sure because it's such a vertically oriented offense.
I don't have much on them unless you do, Reeves, and I think we've done a good job covering him today.
I'm on the pro side as well, just because I think Dayball gets a little bit of a bad rap because of the head coach. He reminds me a lot like Josh McDaniels in the sense of just like, hey, maybe he wasn't made to be a head coach, and be in terms of running the operation to that degree. But I think that he has had success pretty much at every stop, and he gets production out of his quarterbacks too. Obviously the Josh Allen breakout, which, you can say was an outlier, but he was there for the Daniel Jones, hand holding season. And then Jackson Dart was playing for a high fantasy level with him too. So
all the quarterbacks run too.
And I'm more optimistic, and especially just getting, Cam Ward personnel that I think fits his play style as well. I mean, you're getting a 3rd down target in Wan'Dale Robinson, who's been just a 3rd down magnet the last 2 years, and you're getting a guy that sets up with his arm strength in a Carnell Tate, right? And then I'm very excited to see like Carnell Tate have more added on his plate than what we saw in college. So I'm more optimistic, I think, than not. And then you still have Calvin Ridley, who's like not a nothing as a wide receiver 3, right? Like, I get it. Like for fantasy football, you're not like excited to draft Calvin Ridley anymore, but like with those three guys on the field are a lot better than what they were putting on the field at a weekly level. Offensive line still a little bit of an issue, but more optimistic on the Titans guys being undervalued. I would include Tony Pollard in that as well.
All right, I could see it. I mean, we've got a video out here on Cam Ward maybe taking a year or two leap. If it comes together, there's definitely way more talent around him than he had last year.
It's possible. He'll have to run the
ball. They're in the right home, I think, right division.
Yeah.
AFC South. You can try to. I think the Texans win that division, but obviously, like you can compete. I think with the other teams still. I apologize to fans of both the Jaguars and Colts.
Yeah.
The Jaguars are definitely, we're as bullish as we are on Liam Cohen for being a fantasy quarterback. That's a team that's due a ton of regression from a team stance. Like they got so many points off turnovers last year.
Right. True. That's interesting. And they lost Evan Lloyd, who was like a big reason for those points off turnovers. But covered a lot today. Hit basically every offense, basically every play caller, it feels like, most of them at least. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Beyond the Box Score show. Please hit the like button. Please subscribe. Please check out our VODs. Thank you so much to Rich Hribrar. Rich, why don't you let the people know where they can find your work as we go through the rest of this off season?
Yeah, sharpfootballanalysis.com. We just dropped the 2026 preview book that Warren puts out every year. So all my stuff for that is done. So coming out of 4th of July holiday I will just be producing draft kit content from 4th of July till kickoff. And I'll be putting out a different series. For those people that have never checked out the draft kit, I do a different series every week where it's 4 to 5 articles, one per day. And I tackle like a bunch of things that just aren't player based. It's a lot of top down philosophy, like league wide trends, how we can apply that to fantasy football, regression series. I look at a lot of team level stuff too, like we covered here, to kind of give us those North Stars to finding those undercover values a little bit.
Yep. I love that. That's how you find them in fantasy. Thanks again, Rich, Jacob, Dan Schneier here signing off. Beyond the Box Score, hit the like button, subscribe, do all the things I always ask for. Doesn't take much out of you, helps us grow the show. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk to you soon.